Excellent. First of all, before Gayatri, steps in to introduce our two speakers of the first session, let me thank all of you for accepting our invitation to be here. I know it's a Sunday morning. Some of you, as our resource persons, have a lot of other engagements, but supporting us in this venture, we really appreciate that, and we are indeed grateful for your time and for the collaboration, especially Raj. You are here. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us. And Pavitra, thank you so much. So everyone, thank you so much for supporting this learning initiative by NPTM. So I will now invite Gayatri Girish to introduce our two speakers, and we'll take it off from there. Gayatri, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone. We are today on the second session of our ESG and energy law sector, and we have a very distinguished and esteemed speaker, Mr. Raj Niranjan sir, and we also have with us Pavitra R. So Raj Singh sir is a very accomplished speaker on energy law sector. He is, to introduce him is actually it's a privilege. If we look into his credentials, it's been an impeccable career in his energy law sector. So he is the author of Energy Law in India, and he has written extensively on electricity law in India. It's published by Universal Publications. And he has also been an advocate in Supreme Court and also an appellate tribunal of electricity. He's a founder of Dr. Gopal Energy Foundation. He's a managing partner in Trans India Law Associates. He is legal advisor to the International Solar Alliance, which is an international governmental body registered under Article 102 of the United Nations Charter. So the list is endless, and we would invite you for the session, sir, and please take over the session. In just another minute, I would also want to introduce Pavitra R. She's our own person. So she is the disciple of Dr. CEERA Bhatt, so she doesn't need much introduction. And she is presently the assistant professor in Gujarat National Law University, and she is also one of the speakers for today's session. Welcome, both of you. Raj Singh sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. And thank you, Shri CEERA Bhatt ji, for inviting me for the session. So it's a very interesting thing. Ki last 5 years, I have been asking same questions to any founder or CXO level person who is meeting me from energy sector. So I'm speaking from the background. I have a bias towards energy sector because for last 25 years, I have been advising energy sector and I am working in energy sector. तो वो ये आप बायस हमेशा याद रखना. एंड तो मैं उनसे सिंपल क्वेश्चन पूछता था कि what do you expect from a student or a professional who is joining your company, or if you are taking his interview, what kind of expectations you have from that person? And उसमें बहुत सारे सरप्राइजेस मिले मुझे, और सरप्राइजेस ये मिले, उससे मेरे को ये पता चला कि जो फाउंडर है, सो इफ यू आर फाउंडिंग अ रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी कंपनी और पावर कंपनी, सोलर, विंड, हाइड्रो, थर्मल, मे बी ट्रांसमिशन, ग्रीन ट्रांसमिशन, तो आपके मन में क्या चलता रहता है? तो पता चला कि 3 चीजें चलती हैं, 3 थिंग्स. एंड उससे ये मेरे को पता चला कि उनका गोल क्या है. उनका गोल है 3 है सिर्फ. नंबर 1 इज मेक माई पावर प्रोजेक्ट बैंकेबल, फर्स्ट गोल. Second goal is make my power project risk-free. Third goal, make my power project transaction ready. So simple words mein, if you say bankable, that means if you are setting up a energy plant, maybe it may be best. Achha, see, if I say power sector, I mean 6 things. So 6 things together constitute the power sector: generation of electricity, energy storage, transmission of electricity, distribution of electricity, trading of electricity, and supply of electricity. 6 things together is the power sector. So if I'm using the word power sector, you think कि ये 6 चीजों के बारे में बोल रहे हैं. When I'm using the word energy sector, then you imagine I am talking about 12 things. So 12 things together constitute energy sector. It is a value chain of the energy sector. So when I'm saying energy sector, you just assume land and energy fuel is the first. So Anmol is saying, wonderful, ki, can you repeat 6 things? Okay, no worries. So Anmol, power sector ki jo definition hai, what is power sector if somebody says? Then you say 6 things. Generation of electricity. Second is electricity storage. सो जनरेशन में आपके पास है सोलर, विंड, हाइड्रो, थर्मल, न्यूक्लियर. अब कल जो बजट सेशन में न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी को बहुत ज्यादा प्रमोट करा है, 100 गीगावाट्स का टारगेट रखा है टिल 2047. ये जनरेशन हो गया. सेकेंड इज आपका स्टोरेज. सो व्हेन यू हैव जनरेटेड इलेक्ट्रिसिटी देयर आर टेक्नोलॉजीज टू स्टोर इट. तो हाइड्रोजन एनर्जी, पम्प्ड स्टोरेज, it is hydro. Then BESS, battery energy storage system. Second is storage, energy, electricity storage. Third is transmission. So transmission may be within state. When a state utility is working, it is intra-state transmission. When it is between two states, it is interstate transmission. And अभी नया concept आया है, one sun, one world, one grid. So the entire world will be connected through a grid, and India has taken initiative for that connection. जिस तरह से आप जो इंटरनेट कनेक्शन है पूरे अक्रॉस अंडर सी केबल लाइंस की तरह, सेम कनेक्शन वी आर अटेम्प्टिंग कि पूरे वर्ल्ड में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के लिए हो जाए. तो ये ट्रांसमिशन. देन वी कम टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. जो लास्ट माइल कनेक्टिविटी है आपकी, वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंटिटीज है. बहुत सारे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंटिटीज हैं. देन ट्रेडिंग ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. So if somebody buys electricity and sells electricity, it is trading. आप ये समझ लीजिए, it is like a property dealer. वो लिस्ट बना लेता है कि कौन कौन सी कंपनीज में एक्स्ट्रा एक्सेस कैपेसिटी है, और वो लिस्ट बना लेता है कौन कौन सी कंपनीज को पावर की जरूरत है, एंड he facilitates these transactions. He is called trader of electricity. So electricity trading. Then you go to supply of electricity. So whoever is working on electrons, सस्ते में बल्क में इलेक्ट्रॉन्स खरीदना है होलसेल मार्केट में, और रिटेल में महंगे में बेच रहा है, इट इज सप्लाई ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. सो होप आई हैव आंसर्ड द क्वेश्चन. तो 6 चीजें टुगेदर इज द पावर सेक्टर. बट लेट अस नॉट गो टू दैट. ओके, ऑल राइट. सो these are the 3 objectives. They said, please make my power project or energy project bankable. Second objective was to make my power project, energy project risk-free. And third objective was to make my power project or energy project transaction ready. Bankable means that if I'm setting up a power project, any bank across the world should be able to fund my power project. It should be capable of funding. Second is risk-free. All the legal compliances should be complete. It should not be a surprise for me as a CEO, CXO that I receive a notice, any time of my career. Third is it should be transaction ready. So in future, today I have a small power project. In future, I want to invest in a larger power project. So I should be able to sell that power project to the third party or any entity, which law students call merger and acquisition, and there are different various names for that. These were the 3 objectives. So if an engineer or a law student is going for an interview, if he can satisfy the CXO, I can make your power project bankable, I can make your power project risk-free, I can make your power project transaction ready, you are hired. It was so simple actually. And now the question comes, sir, how can I make the power project bankable, risk-free, transaction ready? What should I study? What should I know? What should I learn that these 3 objectives are achieved for the organization? And there comes ESG. So yesterday, I understand you have deliberated on ESG. So I'm not going into the definition. But for power project, what is ESG? That I will tell you. ESG is nothing but 3 things. If you can understand these 3 things, you will make power project bankable, risk-free, and transaction ready. And what are those 3 things? If you understand law, if you understand policy, and if you understand standards, you can achieve all these three goals. And when you understand law, policy, standards, you will be able to make ESG report for the power company. All right, let me tell you the secret. So when a power company approaches TILA, Trans India Law Associates is the law firm, to prepare a ESG report, what do? We follow. I will tell you the secret. I'll tell you the checklist, how to prepare a ESG report for power company. So what we do, we prepare a checklist, and there are three components in that. One is law, second is policies, third is standard. So can somebody say what is the definition of law? I understand all of you are law students.
No, sir. I am
Raj,
mechanical engineer.
most of them are non-law students, Raj.
Acha, okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I am from law school.
Some are, but many are from the industry and many are from the non-law sector, yeah. From the energy
No
sector.
worries, no worries. So as an engineer, what do you think what is law? You can maybe write in the chat box. Okay. For the ESG purposes, what we have done, we have defined law. It is not Austin Bentham or technicalities. It is very simple definition of law. So somebody is saying environmental law, and I have a lot of other comments also. Wonderful. That's great. Very nice. To satisfy the required government standards. So Vidyan Nanda is saying this. All right, Vidyan, wonderful. But then for ESG report, we have standardized the definition of law. What we have said, law means 5 things. Number 1, Constitution of India. Number 2, acts. Number 3, rules. Number 4, regulations. Number 5, notifications. So Constitution was made once. You will see when you are preparing a report, what is the impact on my company because of the constitutional provisions, and you will write in that report. And if something is required to be done in the company because of the constitutional provisions, you write it. Number 2, you identify the acts. So for example, for power sector, the major acts are Electricity Act 2003, Energy Conservation Act 2000. And there are other also environmental legislation. So what we do is, second thing, we identify what steps a company, our energy company or power company has to take, and you can replicate it to other sectors also. So I am specialist, I specialize in energy sector, so I will focus on energy sector, but you can just, this scheme of things you can take up and replicate in other sectors also. Second, we'll see acts. Third, we'll see rules. What compliances are required. Fourth, we will see regulations. Now, Ritesh ji is not satisfied with what I am saying. Ritesh is saying, and Shivam is saying, sir, is there any difference between rules and regulations? Or they are same? There is a difference. Both are different things. Rules are made only and only by the government. So if rules have to be made, it will be Government of India or your Karnataka government or Madhya Pradesh government, state government. Nobody else can make rules. Regulations are made only and only by statutory bodies. Statutory body means, simply you can understand, it is regulatory commission. So Karnataka Electricity Regulatory Commission or Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, they will make regulations. Fifth, so once you have listed out, fifth, you will list out notification. So for engineers, I will simplify it. Britishers have a typical problem. They follow the principle of natural justice. One of the component of principles of natural justice is that prior intimation of law. It should not be a surprise. Everybody should know what is upcoming. So what they did is, they said, prior intimation ke liye, let us do one thing. Let us publish it in 2 newspapers. One in English, and second, let us publish it in maybe vernacular or local language. And once it is done, then it is presumed and assumed that everyone knows the law.
As we got in the newspaper before Aadhaar card.
What is Aadhaar card?
for identification, individual.
No, I did not understand the question.
Sir,
Okay.
one more point. When you are saying
Yes.
the last 5 components we have to look, you didn't speak much about notifications. And also
Notifications. I am speaking. This is the 5th point, the notification. I am
Oh.
speaking about notification now. All right. So, if you have to enforce any of the law, you have to notify it. Okay. And notification ka one of the best ways to publish it in 2 newspapers. So Britishers started doing it, but they faced a challenge. All the newspapers started fighting with each other. They said, please give me these advertisements and these publications of Constitution, Act, Rule, Regulation. It was a lucrative business. So Britishers said, why are we getting in this fight? Let us publish our own newspaper. So government started publishing its own newspaper. And what is that newspaper?
That's Gazette, sir.
Gazette. Gazette of India. Gazette of India and Gazette of the State is the newspaper of the government. Once any provision, Constitution, Act, rules, regulations, or for implementing these Constitution, Act, rules, regulation is published in Gazette. Now, 5th point, you have to write notifications. So 5 things, when you compare, this is the definition of law. Lekin Vikas ji, Ritesh, they are not satisfied. They are saying, sir, what about the judgments of Supreme Court? You have defined law as Constitution, Act, rules, regulation, notification. For my purpose, judgments of Supreme Court, High Court, CERC, SERC are not law. They are interpretation of law. So if 2 people have difference of opinion, they go to the court, they go to the commission, they go to the appellate tribunal of electricity and plead, and then APTEL decides which view or which interpretation is better. So in my view, this is not law. And you will say, what about law-making powers of the court is very, very limited and temporary. Only Constitution provides, only in Supreme Court, not also High Court. Only Supreme Court in Article 141 of the Constitution can make temporary law, and it is guidelines. So let me, and you can ask a counter question, sir, is there any example? The answer is yes. So if there is a gap in law and in any public interest litigation or any case is presented before the Supreme Court and said कि इसमें Constitution में कुछ नहीं लिखा है, there is nothing in Act about this thing, there is nothing in rules about this thing, there is nothing in regulations about this thing, then Supreme Court will make a guidelines. Those guidelines will be law temporarily till the time the parliament or the state legislature does not make the act. So you can ask a counter question, is there an example for that? Answer is yes, there are a lot of examples. The most famous case, so there was a public interest litigation from Rajasthan, and in that public interest litigation, it was pleaded that there is no law for the protection of women in workplace. And the Supreme Court issued famous guidelines of Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. Once in 2013, POSH Act was made, these guidelines were null and void. So it is a temporary power. So 5 cheezein. But the Power Grid Corporation of India was not satisfied with this definition of law. Engineers, the Constitution, Act, rules, regulation, notification. Why? Because Power Grid had to maintain the frequency, the blood pressure of the entire system. So can any of the engineers tell us what is the largest machine of the world?
Lead.
And wonderful, very nice. Grid is the largest machine of the world. And जिस तरह से we have to maintain our blood pressure, similarly we have to maintain the blood pressure of the grid. So when you have to maintain the blood pressure, or you can call it frequency of the grid, you have to ask a lot of power plants to shut down or to start or to ramp down. A lot of directions have to be given. And when Power Grid, I am talking about 1995, the law has changed. But when Power Grid in 1995, 96, 97 was asking hydropower plant to ramp down or asking the thermal power plant to shut down to maintain the frequency, these power plants were not listening to him. उनका ये कहना है if I generate more electricity, I will get more revenue. Why should I shut down my hydropower plant when a lot of water is available? So then Power Grid approached Central Electricity Regulatory Commission in 1998 and appropriate complaint was filed. When notice was issued, so engineer said, sir, we are engineers, we don't understand law. If you can compile it in one book or compile it in one document, we'll be very happy. We'll be able to comply with whatever directions are required to maintain the frequency of the grid. That one document was prepared initially by Power Grid and approved by Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. It is called Indian Electricity Grid Code. It is compilation of law. So sixth component in energy sector which you have to see is codes. So first, so I have said if you have to prepare a ESG report for an energy company, there are three things you have to see: law, policy and standards. First component is law. तो आप सिर्फ 6 चीजें देख लीजिए, आपको पूरा लॉ आपके ESG सिस्टम में आ जाएगा, आपकी रिपोर्ट में आ जाएगा. Up second, somebody was I was just seeing the comment and somebody said कि okay, so that will be covered in the second part. Second thing which you have to see is what is policy. So can somebody share what do you think about policy? आप क्या सोचते हैं? What is the meaning of policy? How do you identify the policy? So for the purpose of ESG report, I have defined law for all of you. Now you can prepare. It's goal oriented. Okay, all right, wonderful. Schemes, governance I'm reading the comments actually. Guidelines or framework, wonderful. Government chooses to do or not to do. What is the objective and how to achieve it? Wonderful, very nice. Incentives. Mayank Pandey ji bol rahe. Somebody is saying guidelines for promoting a sector. Wonderful, very nice. Cause and consequences. So जब भी मैं wonderful बोलता हूं तो ये मत समझना आप कि वो जो आंसर है वो सही है. All right. So दो words हम लोग use करते हैं. We use two words. One is wonderful and so absolutely. So whenever we are in the court of law we are with the authority and the authority is communicating something which we may agree, we may not agree as a lawyer. So what we say absolutely. Absolutely ka matlab it is not yes, it is not no. It is only the meaning of absolutely is that I have heard you what you have said and I have understood what you have said. That's it. If I agree or if I disagree, it is not. So if I say absolutely, don't say कि ये correct है sir, आपने absolutely बोला था. Secondly, when I say wonderful, that does not mean that whatever answer you are giving is correct. Wonderful का मतलब कि it is full of wonders. So I don't understand it what you are saying. Okay. So all right. So two words also we have learned. Let us come to that's all the definitions were wonderful. But for the purpose of ESG report, what we have done is we have defined policy. So we say 5 things are policy. Number 1, if government, state government and central government releases any document with the word policy, it is policy, number 1. Number 2, if the state government and central government releases any document with the word guidelines, it is also policy. Guidelines, there are alternative words for guidelines like procedure and methodology. But this also we categorize in guidelines. Third, if state government and central government releases any document with the word plan, it is also policy. So plan is also, there are alternative words for plan like program, roadmap, mission. It is all plan. Fourth, if the government, central government or state government releases any document with the word scheme, it is also policy. Fifth, if the government, central government, state government releases any document as a model law, it is also policy. So Rohit ji and Dr. Bhatt may ask a counter question. Sir, is there any difference between all these 5 words? There is a difference. So policy is released whenever the government wants to communicate why and what. What is the overarching philosophy? Second, guidelines is released whenever government wants to say how to do certain things. So it is standard operating procedure. किस तरह से करना है इसको? It is an official advice actually. Third, plan is who, where, and when. Whenever government releases a plan, it is who will do it, where it will be done, and when it will be done. So who will do it means whether district collector will do it, whether chief minister will do it, whether prime minister will do it. Where, whether it is a district plan, it is a state plan, it is a regional plan, it is a national plan. When, whether it is a monthly plan, it is an annual plan, financial year plan, it is a 5-year plan. So who, where, and when is answered in plan. Fourth is scheme. If somebody wants funds, if somebody says, I want government funds, just see all the schemes. Scheme means funds actually. Fifth is model laws. So if the central government wants that all the states, there should be uniformity in the laws made by the states, then it prepares model law. For the purpose of electricity sector, Forum of Regulators prepares model regulations. Based on those model regulations, all the state electricity regulatory commissions, then they prepare their own regulations. But then whatever Forum of Regulators is doing, it is policy only. It is not law. So these things, you have to see 5 things and you will understand policy. Third component, because I have only 5-10 minutes, I will just dictate you third component, which is standards. So first you will go to law and make the checklist. Then you will go to policy and make the checklist. And final checklist you will make of standards. And then you can compile your ESG report for power sector. In case of standards, जिस तरह से 5 के components law के बताए थे and policy के बताए थे, it is not like this for standards. For understanding standards, you have to go to institutions. So first institution which makes standards for the power sector is Central Electricity Authority. It is a standards making body. When you go to Central Electricity Authority website, you will see standards for everything, whether it is metering standards, whether it is safety standards, whether it is construction standards. You have to note down whether these standards have been followed. Second authority which makes standards for the power sector is Bureau of Indian, it is BIS. So you go and for all components, you will have those standards. Third is Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So Bureau of Energy Efficiency makes conservation standards. So energy conservation ke all standards are made by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Fourth component which you have to see, fourth institution which you have to see, it is AIS, Automotive Industry Standards, because e-mobility is now connecting to the energy sector. And fifth, which you have to see, is Automotive Research Association of India. So these 5 standards, and these are the 5 standards which are Indian standards, but sometimes we refer to 5 international standards. I'll just name them and then wind up my topic so that you can do your own research. And international standards are made by International Standards Organization. Number 2, IEEE. 3, American National Standards Institute. 4, IEC Standards, International Electrotechnical Standard Commission, and BS, British Standards. Why these 5 standards I have said? Because we sometimes adopt these standards in the power sector. So this is the scheme we have made for preparing ESG report for energy sector. And आप बोलोगे law policy standards में क्यों हमने focus करा है? The reason is that some of the components of power sector are monopolies. So distribution and transmission, which is visible to you, they are all monopolies and they are micro-regulated. So once you follow law policy standards and you prepare ESG report, all aspects of environment and social and entire governance is covered fully. So hope it is useful to everyone. And this workshop, you will take away something and maybe TILA ESG report का system जो हमने बनाया है, maybe it will be useful for all of you in your careers and whatever practice or work you are doing. All right. So back to you, Dr. Sairam.
Thank you, Dr. Niranjan.
Thank you, sir.
We usually, see a lot of, information, messages, and updates from a group that you created. So really grateful for that, because that is a great knowledge sharing platform as well. We hope we'll continue to collaborate. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise as well. It was quite insightful in understanding the background of how ESG reporting from the energy sector has to be taken forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank
Good
you.
morning, sir. Sir, could I ask one question?
In the chat box,
Last
please, if you don't mind. Don't mind. Yeah, use the chat
So,
box.
जैसे सायरम भट्टी ने, he has a very important point. He has said, if you want to understand the energy sector, we have created a free YouTube channel which is called Energy Dialogue with Raj Singh Niranjan. So in Energy Dialogue with Raj Singh Niranjan, whenever I give lectures across the world, so that is uploaded. This lecture also, if the team permits, we'll upload it there. And if you are interested in energy sector, you can go and accordingly you can see whatever videos you want to see. So thank you, Bhaji. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Excellent. Pavitra, it's over to you.
Good morning, participants, and I thank the previous speaker for delivering such a wonderful session. From where Sir left, I would take it forward and I will continue on the similar lines of how law, policy, standard works. And that's where we pitch in and bring in a concept called as BRSR report. Before I go ahead to what exactly is BRSR, I'll just take a moment to display my screen. I'm hoping that the screen is visible. All right. I'm hoping that the screen is visible and that I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, perfect. When we talk about environmental social governance, we talk primarily in terms of compliance. Now, when we say compliance, as a company, you have to comply with a lot of things. There are company law that comes into place, labor laws that come into place, environmental law that comes into place. There are societal norms, regulations that come into place. So these compliances, in a way, affect you financially. When you get affected financially, then mostly the companies that get affected financially and have demand from the community as such are companies that are listed and regulated by SEBI. Now, these companies work towards profit, though we say we have to work for people, we have to work for the planet, we have to work for prosperous country economy. It is actually the companies tend to work for profit. Irrespective of multiple attempts that were taken by Government of India, there were times where we realized it was always the financial matrices that ruled the entire corporate parlance. From the financial matrices, there was a need to also stress on the importance of non-financial matrices. Now, when we say non-financial metric parameters, it initially started off as a voluntary guideline based on the United Nations guideline. Yesterday, Raghav sir in his session also looked at principles called as UNPRI principles. Now, they all came about as a voluntary mechanism. But at the end of the day, we are people who don't tend to listen to what is voluntary. Though companies did go ahead to do certain compliances, but not all compliances were voluntarily done. The motive was not properly achieved. Therefore, in Companies Act, one of the legislation that deals with companies is the Companies Act of 2013. They mandated and introduced something called as CSR policy. CSR is a component that is there under Section 135 of the Companies Act, where we say when a particular threshold of annual turnover is reached, or when a particular threshold of profit is reached, then you go ahead to contribute 2% of the threshold that you reached to the local communities that are there. Now, if you are a company who is going ahead to serve to the local community, there are certain ways you can go ahead to serve. One, you can improve on the health of the vulnerable section or the local community. You can work towards their education. You can work towards bringing up libraries. You can work towards ensuring that there is clean environment kept, etc., etc. To this extent, there was a CSR policy that came up under the Companies Act itself. Now, this policy, in most instances, catered to bare minimal needs. It did not really require the companies to report back properly. the reporting was very minimal. Against it, they came up something called as responsibility reporting. Again, this business responsibility reporting was a voluntary reporting. After multiple rounds of stakeholder consultation and primary level consultations, Government of India decided we will come up with something called as BRSR, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. This came in the year 2021. Now, this component was introduced through SEBI regulation. The reason why it came through SEBI regulation is because we wanted to impose this on listed companies. So there is something called as SEBI listing and disclosure requirement obligation called as SEBI LODR regulation. Now that regulation got tweaked, and through the tweaking, BRSR component was included. Because it is SEBI, this BRSR guideline that we speak of is mandated at the moment for only top 1,000 listed entities. So if you are a listed company and you are falling under the top 1,000 listed entity category based on market capitalization of the company, then you would have to mandatorily report as per BRSR. Now, this also means you are targeting only the top 1,000 companies. Rest of the companies need not really go ahead to tell. I have not changed the slide, sir. I'll change in the due period. So you go ahead to say only top 1,000 companies are required to list it, which means other companies are left at bay. In order to again voluntarily go ahead to tell other companies have to do it, they introduce something called as BRSR Lite, which does not really have as many compliances as is required. So we have BRSR, which tells you what are the things that have to be disclosed, and we have BRSR Lite, which is for the other companies which will have to list if they voluntarily go ahead to do so. Now, if I tell you it's not mandatory for you to go ahead to report, but please voluntarily report. Can we have few chat from the participants which let us know why do you think they will have to voluntarily come and do this? What do you think are the reasons why ESG reporting matters? And when we report, what are the complaints? But I am not mandating the complaints. I did not mandate attendance. Why will the participants attend the class? So when I'm not mandating, brand reputation, one, I'll give it to that. Ethical needs, we don't really look into it majorly, but goodwill, yes. Investor interest or stakeholder interest is one. Competitive advantage, the more you report, the more the company gets visibility in the audience. Therefore, there is a competitive advantage. There is a social impact. There is an export consideration that comes into place. Transparency is built. Accountability is built. For all these reasons, you will go ahead to do voluntary reporting as well. Almost all the answers that are given in chat goes in line with why voluntary compliance is also a good compliance method. On that note, as I just discussed, very quickly, SEBI introduced the business responsibility reporting in 2015. It moved on to BRSR in the year 2021. This came about in the year 2021. I told you, you have to start reporting. I did not tell from when. It became mandatory from the financial year 2022-23, meaning one set of BRSR reporting is already done. Now, what is happening will be the follow-up sets. When we Google what are the companies that have already given BRSR, and in specific, since we are dealing with energy sector, when I tried finding which are the companies that are doing it, we find Adani has already given up it has given out the BRSR report. Coal India has given out, Reliance has given out, Tata Power has given out. These are companies that are already in compliance. So other companies that are intending to do the compliance have a guideline as to how things will work. Apart from you have your standard guidelines that are there, SEBI itself in their website has gone ahead to tell which are the varied guidelines that you have to do. In order to better appreciate these reports and these guidelines, I will give you a clarity of how BRSR works. So that's the action that I intend to do in this session. When we look at BRSR, the BRSR itself is divided into three portions. First portion, it is only about listed companies, sir. Yes, it is about listed company because only listed companies are mandated at the moment. And that too, not all listed company. It is only 1,000 top listed companies according to market capitalization. However, as I already said, it's not necessary that only listed companies will have to do. Other companies also will do for brand reputation, for competitive advantage purposes, as discussed in chat. Now, this BRSR itself has 3 sections within it, or it is divided into 3 parts. The first part is the general disclosure. I'm presuming that most of the participants here would already be associated with one company or other. You can take your company as in your mind as an example. When I say general disclosure that is required, it will be about the company. It will be about the products that are there in the company, the services that the company is intending to do or is already doing, the employees. So you'll have to have all the numbers in place. What are the associate companies or subsidiary companies that are there? If at all you come under CSR regulation, what is the CSR follow-up that you have done? What is the transparency and disclosure mechanism that's there? To put it simply, Section A is all about facts about the company. So anything and everything relating to the company will be given in Section A, which will be very factual. In most instances, board of directors will have all information in place. Then comes Section B. In Section B, we have other forms of disclosure called management and process disclosure. Now, when I say management and process disclosure, here is where Sir previously told, whatever policy that you have in place, you have to keep it intact and also disclose. यहाँ पे you will disclose the policy measures, the policy initiatives that the company has taken. If you are a company, if I have to tell you certain policies you'll have to take care of, what suddenly comes to your mind or what can you recollect in terms of policy measures that you will have to do for the company? You have employees, you have board of directors, you have products, you have process. What are the varied policies that you will come up with? From there, I'll take a cue and go to section C. What are the varied policies that you will come up? You have employees. Will you have any policy for your welfare policy? You will come up with employee welfare policy, staff welfare policy. Apart from that, you will have health and safety, occupational hazard relief policies. Welfare policy will be HR, health and safety will be labor law against child labor. You will go against child labor, so you will have a policy to that effect. If you are working in an industry, you will have to have safety policy. Human rights is very important. You will have to ensure that there is a work time that is fixed. You cannot exploit your laborers and employees. Therefore, you will have human right policy. Environmental management policy in energy sector, there are a lot of emissions that end up happening. So you'll have to have a mark over the emissions in order to achieve net zero. Again, net zero as a concept was discussed yesterday. So you'll have environmental management policy, you'll have social security policy. Insurance has to be given. Health insurance has to be taken for the employees. So social security policies will be taken. You have to protect the women workforce within the system. Therefore, you'll have to have prevention against sexual harassment policies in place. You have to have policies for promotion. This is incentives to promote the workman better. You have to have carbon emission policy, resource efficiency, CSR, waste disposal. All these policies are brought in one place. ISO standards have to be fulfilled. For procurement, you have to have a policy. I'll take procurement as an example because I want to connect it to suppliers. When we are talking about procurement, it is not company and its employees alone. We tend to go one step ahead to it. And when we go one step ahead, we are talking about third party people as well. The third party people here are the suppliers, vendors. You have to have a way to deal with the third parties and vendors. Therefore, there is a need to create a policy of how you maintain a relationship and what kind of vendors are accepted and who you should not be accepting, etc. All of them should also be brought in one particular place. Hence, you should have a third party vendor supplier policy as well. All the policies that are existing at the moment, whatever you have as a company at the moment, everything should be disclosed in section B. There is a reason why you tell what is there at the moment. Because what is not there, we will identify in section C, and we'll try and work to bridge the gap between section B and section C. I will repeat. Section B tells you what are the varied policies, what are the varied management procedures and processes that the company already has. If you already have, great. Just give a checklist of these are the things that we have. Once you have given it, then we go to section C, where under section C, there are 9 principles of BRSR that is provided. For each principle, there is a policy formulation that is required. There is a checklist that is created. You go according to the checklist and find out what is there in section B, which is going in tally with section C. If they go in the same line, we are very happy. If something is there in section C, but is not there in the company, then there is a gap. We do something called as gap assessment. After doing the gap assessment, you have to work towards fulfilling the gap or bridging the gap. So we do gap assessment and we have to end up bridging the gap. It is very important for us to bridge the gap because these principles give out something called as key parameter indicators, or in other words, it's called as KPI. Now within KPI also, there are 2 kinds of KPI. One KPI being essential indicator KPI, the other one being leadership indicator KPI. In essential indicator KPI, it is essential, it's required, it's mandatory, without which BRSR reporting will fail. Therefore, essential indicator parameter is a mandatory parameter. Companies have no choice but to fulfill that indicator. On the other hand, leadership indicator is voluntary. If you have it, great. If you don't have it, we'll still look down you, but then we'll not punish you or penalize you for any of the voluntary acts that are not done within the principles itself. Now, as I prior told you, SEBI website does have an entire format of giving guidelines and disclosures. In order to better appreciate the guideline and disclosure, you have to know the mechanisms and way about. This particular BRSR reporting is mandatory from 2020 to 23, meaning one set is already done, the second, third set is on the way. BRSR Lite is for small companies, those companies that are intending to do voluntary adoption, not in its fullest form, but even if you are going to list few things, just to do materiality assessment, that's also sufficient in BRSR Lite. What is materiality assessment? I'll talk about it once I've given a vague idea of what the principles are. Now, there are 9 principles under BRSR. The first principle of BRSR tells, as a business, as a company, it is your duty to act in the integral manner. You have to act ethically, transparently, and with accountability. So integrity, ethical, transparency, and accountability are the key factors under principle 1. Principle 2 tells, whichever supplier you are dealing with for the purpose of goods and services, whichever vendor you are dealing with for the purpose of goods and services, you have to deal in a safe and sustainable manner. It's also called as responsible sourcing principle. So you have to take utmost care of who are you dealing with, how are you dealing with, are you dealing with them in a sustainable manner, are you dealing with them in a safe manner, is this a environmentally prudent sourcing mechanism, is what is given under principle 2. Principle 3 tells employees are the most important layer of people in the company. Without employees, no company will achieve success. Therefore, you will have to come up with those policies that respect and promote well-being of the employees. Now, when we say employees, it's just not those within your organization, also people who are outside your organization, who have direct relation to the company. So when I say employees, it is just not employees of the organization, but also those who have direct relation to the organization should also be properly taken care of. To that extent, you should have policies and standards kept. Principle 4 tells, in a company, there will be multiple stakeholder. A stakeholder is just not board of directors of a company or employees of a company. There are stakeholders. Government takes the character of stakeholder, consumers take the character of stakeholder, third party vendors take the character of a stakeholder. Each and every party have to be, community take the character of a stakeholder. So each and every party will have to be taken care in the entire process. Anybody who is directly as well as indirectly impacted, like Ashish is letting us know. So anybody who is directly and indirectly impacted by the business will have to be properly taken care of. That's principle 4. Principle 5 tells human rights is the need of the hour. It is important for us to respect human rights. You should know when to work, when not to work. You should have proper human rights policy in place. You should have proper canteen in your workplace, etc. Or all directly correlated to human rights. Safety instruments, safety weapons, all operational guidelines and all should be in place is given under principle 5. Principle 6 tells, while you are a company which is intending to promote GDP of the nation, you also use the resources of the nation. Now, when you're using the resources of the nation, number one, depletion of resources happen. Number two, pollution to a larger extent happens. These are a given. We use raw materials and there is depletion of raw materials. And on the other hand, by using all the scientific advancements that we have polluted the environment to a larger extent. Therefore, we have to take efforts to protect and restore environments. Our policy should have themes where we do protection and restoring environment. Say, for example, a 3-acre land with a lot of trees were destroyed and industry came about there. Now, one way to restore the environment is to do offsetting. How many ever trees you destroyed, so many ever saplings you plant and ensure that the saplings are converted to trees. So that's one way of restoration of environment. Principle 7 says, when you are engaging with a regulatory or a policy making with government, it goes with a interesting theory called as interest group theory, where we say whenever there are set of people who have the capacity to sit in a meeting where legislations are decided, you have to influence in a way that you act responsible, transparent, and do not influence in a wrong manner. You don't think of you, but you think of India at a larger scale. Principle 8 tells we all have to promote growth and equitable development and inclusive development. The last tells any product or service that's given by the company ultimately is used by the customers. Therefore, customers have to be treated responsibly. So whenever, say for example, I buy a Britannia biscuit packet today. If you check, there is a feedback mechanism that's there in the outer box. That feedback mechanism is letting the world know that I am being responsible. In case something is wrong, please let me know, I'll rectify it, correct. So these are the ways BRSR tells companies to act prudent, and these principles itself have different measures. But because it is a 30 to 35 minute session, I tried to keep it short. And there's also disclaimer clauses, there are feedback mechanisms. All of them go well with consumer protection norms that are required under Principle 9. There is also data protection requirement that will fall under Principle 9. Now, in the next 10 minutes that I have, I will talk in brief what exactly is materiality. Now, all of this principle or any of the principle that you're taking into consideration, laws are a law. There are large number of laws that talk about a company. When we talk about ESG, you're not supposed to be worried of all the laws that are there in the country. You have to worry about those laws that affect the materiality of the business that you're talking about. Say, for example, the energy sector in the present course that we are talking about. There are few material aspects that you have to worry. Number one, when we speak of energy, the usage or consumption of energy will be a material aspect. Number one, which is a material aspect, is consumption of energy. Number two, the more we use energy, the more emissions occur. So emissions is one thing that you have to worry about. Third thing that you can technically worry about is the land use or landfills that can end up happening. Fourth, because we have to be responsible according to BRSR, do you have renewable energy being used? So renewable energy is an opportunity. Emission is a threat. Depending on the kind of material factor that I choose, you also have to figure out whether it is a opportunity or a threat. Emission is a threat, whereas renewable energy is an opportunity. To offset, you have to use more renewable energy and reduce the amount of emission. Is there statutory limitation or time? You have to file it every financial year. So every 12 months, starting from April, not from January. So every financial year, we ask for reporting. So that's relating to the time frame. The next one is with respect to energy sector itself. These are the basic things. So when you assess, you will try and find out what policies are there with respect to emission, with respect to consumption of energy, with respect to landfills. Are there any attempts that are taken by the company to transition from non-renewable energy to renewable energy is a math that you will try and do. So always try and do the existing ESG state assessment, figure out what are the reporting that are there, do materiality assessment. When you do the materiality assessment, three things or four questions that can be asked is, which are the stakeholders who you think are important in understanding material factors? Identifying materiality to the given sector is actually a difficult task. It's important to have a brainstorming session and discuss on materiality. So call stakeholders, sit with them, find out what is material to the company, and figure out what are the issues that are there in the company at the moment. Find out different ways to engage with the stakeholder. Public hearing can be one way to go about it. You asking for different suggestions can be one way to go about it. Conducting in the annual general meeting itself, conducting relevant questions relating to ESG can be one way to go about it. So we will have to find out different ways to engage with stakeholder, compile all the data, act upon what you asked, what the stakeholders told. So it's just not compilation of data, but also delivering according to the standards that are required. Now, materiality itself, very quickly, I'll tell you, there are two kinds of materiality that will come into place called double materiality. It's never a single aspect. In double materiality, what we say, construe two things. Yesterday, I did see a lot of chat where they said, when we want to report to ESG as per BRSR, the amount of finance or the amount of money that we'll have to invest is much higher. Therefore, what ESG reporting or BRSR reporting itself says is construe two things. One is financial materiality. The other one is impact materiality. So when you are trying to leave a mark to the general society through BRSR, try and figure out how this non-financial impact reporting is going to ultimately help you in financial returns. So it is proportionate in nature. Financial materiality itself, the concept of financial materiality and impact materiality, both go hand in hand. They are not separate. The more you invest, the more you get as return, even though if it is a non-financial metric investment that you are doing. It will come back. It will take some time, but then over a long period of time, your company will flourish as the idea that is undertaken. To the question to which principle it is connected, it's principle 9. The last principle that deals with consumer data privacy is connected. After doing all the materiality, ensure that you have a ESG strategy in place, which goes again to define which are the policies that requires reviewing, which are the policies that requires updating. Once all of this is done, once materiality assessment is done, you don't leave it there. You time and again do something called as maturity assessment. Now, what do we mean by maturity assessment? Has the gap that was intended to be filled in the first place, been filled properly. We think we will be able to fill it, but sometimes it's not a possibility. So what we have to try and do at a later stage in regular intervals is, after materiality assessment, do maturity assessment. That is, always figure out whether the gap that was intended to be filled has been properly filled or not. I've already discussed about double materiality, therefore I'm skipping it. I will quickly, these are, because the slides will be shared, you will have a fair idea of what are the questions that you as a stakeholder will have to ask your board when they sit for BRSR meeting or for a ESG reporting meeting. I've made it very, very clear and specific. So just the bare reading and perusal through it will help you for sure. I'll quickly tell you how Adani has done with the BRSR policy, and maybe I'll hand the session over to the other speakers. Adani has gone ahead to uh, display in their website and bring about a separate policy, which is a unique way to go about things. They have made their own BRSR policy to facilitate BRSR reporting. And in the policy, they have given clearly what will be the code of conduct for the board, what will be the code of conduct for the employees, what are the training programs that are required to be conducted. This training program can qualify as a BRSR training program, which means more than 100 participants have already done prudent compliance as required by SEBI LODR guideline. And there is also a requirement of self-compliance reporting. Regular publishing of reports in website has to be done. Sustainable sourcing through public-private partnership has to be done. Equal opportunities have to be given to all, from women to the vulnerable sections. Everybody should be working in the company. There should be stringent policy against harassment. 2-3 times I've seen Posh as a reply in comment. So your idea and understanding goes simultaneously with what's required. CSR policy has to work on sustainability, health and education. Compliance to HR laws have to be in place. There should be an independent assessment of what materiality assessment you did, so that we have better BRSR implementation. There should be proper consultation through collective platforms. You should probably be asking for consultancy and help and advocacy where required. And lastly, we have to protect and promote the consumers through BRSR reporting. With that,
Ma'am, I have a question.
yes, sir.
Sorry to interject. In terms
Not a
of the
problem, sir. I'll be
CSR laws,
No. Please raise that question in the chat box,
Yes, sir.
because see,
okay.
there are
Sure,
114 participants, right? So if I
sure,
allow
sure.
for one,
Noted.
it would be unfair to the others. So please use the chat box. Please. See, this
Noted.
is a
Thank you.
just 5-hour workshop. So we do not have space for interaction by unmuting. I'm really sorry for that, but that's the mandate through which we have organized this workshop under NPTEL, right? So if I allow for one, it would raise issues for others. So use the chat box. My colleague Pavitra will definitely answer all your queries. There is no problem regarding that, right? So I think keeping respect to the time, because it's a very short schedule and we have 6 speakers in the morning. We are completed with 2 speakers. So just on that, I'm really sorry for that, but I'm sure Pavitra and you both will cooperate and understand.
Definitely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
See,
And
had
I
it
want
been
to
a
thank
training
Madam Sir
program
for
which we
changing.
usually organize, we allow for a lot of interaction, right? So training programs and workshops have to be treated differently, and this is a time-bound program. So I'm really sorry for that interjection. Okay. So Pavitra, thank you so much. We will all have to now start reporting ethically, legally, and socially responsible sustainability reporting, right? But I'm sure this applies to businesses and not for profits. So the energy sector is probably for profits, and they have a business responsibility reporting as we go forward. So it's a great session. I think while Pavitra did insist upon mandatory reporting, I think beyond the 1,000 listed companies, most companies must start working for sustainability reporting. I think while we talk about CSR, for example, before 2013, CSR was voluntary. 2013 law made it mandatory. So if you look at in India, a lot of companies, even before Section 135, had CSR policies. A lot of companies, including public sector undertakings, including the Tatas, the Birlas. Please note, they all did social responsibility, and they did it voluntarily. The law made it mandatory. That's all, right? So it's like allocation. But remember, Later on, the government realized that, the partnership that is required with the businesses need not criminalize non-spending of CSR. So we changed that, right? So we have decriminalized that provision as well. So I think while we are talking of the SEBI regulations on BRSR, I think it's important that while we look at ethical considerations, we look at legal considerations, but the value chain of a company is determined in terms of how these reports are actually being drafted. So it's not just on paper, but in reality, it is very important. Like many of you in this group will understand that through Pavitra's presentation, one thing that most of you will appreciate is how do we get data for BRSR? Do you get data or do you create data, or is the data available? Right? How many of you, I want this in the chat box, how many of you think for BRSR, these 1,000 companies already have good data? Come on. Is data available? Pavitra has started the chain of, very less. Okay. Someone from the ESH, department, people who are working in the field of ESH, do we have data? Is it authentic data, verified data? So under BRSR, is the data, should the data be verified? Should the data be verified? Okay, whatever data created, Raviji, no problem, don't worry. Even if it's created, should it be verified? Or is it just voluntarily data that is to be filed before SEBI? I hope you understand what is verification, right? It could be neutral verification, third-party verification, audit verified, someone who has to say your data is good data, and that's why it can be filed before SEBI, right? No, authorized is usually by your own organization. That's fine, because your organization and your board must allow you to file BRSR. That's a different thing. Authorization is internal. But I'm saying data to be verified, right? Okay. So how many of you think companies, if they have ISO, International Standard Organization certification, will be able to do BRSR better? So what is ISO? What is BRSR? What is CSR? Both are different. No, I agree they're different. But does it allow you to create data better? Does it allow you to bring in internal accountability better? ISO will not help. Slightly. Now you're changing it. Okay. Okay. ISO will help. Someone says. Okay. Okay. Systems have to be in place, right? BRSR is not going to be easy because that's a regulatory compliance in India. And it will have implications from SEBI because it is reporting. These are documentations that go to the public domain. My last question to you is this public document, BRSR, can it be accessed? Like Pavitra was talking about Adani. I'm a little worried. Did she have insider information, or can this be accessed? Is this public document? Is this available for everyone to see, scrutinize? What do you think? It's a public document? It's a public document. All of you agree with that?
Document remains public, but we don't know the data in the document is right or wrong.
So I think you're all watchdogs, right? You're all there, yeah, as citizens of this country. Yeah, BRSR is reporting it is to SEBI. Do you want it to be public? But do you want public to be assisted by verifying this kind of a data, by vetting this data, right? All of these are, I think, issues that contribute to BRSR. But I think these are challenges that will continue to remain. I think we will kind of work on these challenges and make sustainability reporting as a matter of practice. And I believe that it need not be something that need to be followed just because the regulators say so. I think we must look at it from a voluntary compliance mechanism, because I think it makes a lot of sense for all kinds of stakeholders, including workers, consumers, investors, and all others. I think that should be the norm as we go forward. And that's, I think, the real implementation of ESG. Okay, great. Thank you, Pavitra. With this, we should go to the second session of the day, where we have Jay and Gayatri KK. But before that, Girish will introduce both our speakers. Yes, Raji, false data is greenwashing. That's the next topic. That's the reason, I just laid the contextualization of the next session. So greenwashing is something that is going to be discussed by Jay Batruka, but we have two speakers, one on carbon credits or what we call as credit exchanges and energy exchange or and greenwashing. So yeah, Gayatri.
So moving on to the next session, we have our very own from the team, Jai Batsruka and Gayatri KK. So this session is kind of designed to make you understand what is we have learned about ESGs for quite some time, and we also know about what is we will now learn about what is greenwashing and how does these things affect ESGs in a very in a very substantial way. And we would also be talking about carbon credit system by KK. So it would be I assure it would be a very interesting session. So it's over to you, Jay.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Pavitra, ma'am, for the wonderful presentation. I'll just take it forward from there. So the topic I would be dealing with is greenwashing, ESG rules and regulations. Now let's understand greenwashing and how does environmental social governance come into this entire aspect. So I'll be dividing my presentation into what is greenwashing in the Indian sector, a few case studies, energy, whether it's a service or not, and the best practices and the key ESG consideration for setting up an energy sector or company in India. So let's see the aspect of greenwashing and what actually is greenwashing and then move forward. So greenwashing generally refers to a practice of making misleading or unsubstantiated claims about the environmental benefits of a product, service, or company. Now, this can include false or exaggerated claims about sustainability, carbon neutrality, or other environmental metrics. Now, what are the current guidelines? And what are the various reporting systems that are already in place in India? As we just saw, the BRSR guidelines, the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. But very recently, the CCPA came up with the Prevention and Regulation of Greenwashing Guidelines 2024. While it came in 2024, it has been notified and implemented in 2025. Now, this guidelines, it regulates misleading environmental claims in advertisements, ensuring that they are truthful, substantiated, and transparent. Now, the claims, they must be backed by verifiable evidence with clear disclosures and proper certifications. Now, these guidelines, they complement the existing laws that are there in place and are enforced under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. We also have the Advertising Standards Council of India that looks into it, the Reserve Bank of India, and the Energy Conservation Act 2022, which I would be dealing in the latter part of my presentation. Now, the prevention of regulation of greenwashing guidelines that have just come into place, it deals exclusively with another set of misleading advertisements and environmental claims. While previously India did not have a specific definition of the term greenwashing, the recent guidelines have somewhat made an attempt to do the same. And it defines greenwashing for the very first time, which is any deceptive or misleading practice which includes concealing, omitting, or hiding information by exaggerating, making vague, false, or unsubstantiated environmental claims, and use of misleading words, symbols, or imagery, placing emphasis on positive environmental aspects while downplaying or concealing harmful attributes. Now, this entire definition covers disinformation disseminated by an organization, enterprise, etc., to promote itself as an environmentally responsible organization. And this definition exempts the obvious hyperboles, puffery, and the use of generic color schemes or pictures that are not deceptive or misleading. But it doesn't just end here. It moves further and also defines environmental claims as well. What is an environmental claim? A good environmental claim, either in its entirety or as a component in the manufacturing process, packaging, or the manner in which it has been used, good or bad, or in its disposal. Now, these cover almost all the environmental awareness shown by businesses through their green buildings, eco-label sustainability reports, industry pledges, and clean technologies. Now, this can have a positive impact on the environment or contributing to sustainability, causing less harm to the environment compared to a previous version of the same product or service. Now, the guidelines are widely applicable, but it has a few non-applicability as well. Specific clause 4 of these guidelines are non-applicable until the advertisement is somehow or other linked to the product or service being advertised. So once the advertisement is linked with the product or service provided, only then these guidelines come into effect. Now, substantiation of environmental claim, we have seen that. Now, what are the disclosures that needs to be supported as per the recent guidelines? Now, all the disclosures, they must be accessible by the...
Jay, are you moving the slides? It's still in the first slide.
Yes, sir. I'll be moving the slides as well.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Now, the disclosures that needs to be held in this particular guidelines or as per this particular guidelines is dealt with clause 7, which deals with the data being disclosed must point out all the pertinent details and must include both favorable and unfavorable observations as well. Second, any person making an environmental related claim must specify whether it refers to the good part, manufacturing process, packaging, manner of use of the good or its disposal or service or part thereof, or the process of rendering the entire service. The third is comparative environmental claims that compare one product or service to another must be based on verifiable and relevant data that is disclosed to the consumers. The fourth is environmental claims relating to carbon offsets, carbon neutral, compositable, degradable, free of sustainability claims, non-toxic, 100% neutral, ozone safe and ozone friendly, recyclable, refillable, renewable, and similar assertions that is being made needs to be backed by proper certification, reliable scientific evidence, or independent third-party verification. It has also given an aspect of future environmental claims, which relates to what is aspirational and futuristic and what can be made clear, planned by denoting the objectives that has been laid out by means of achieving the same have been formulated as per this. Now that the guidelines are in place, the Advertising and Standard Council of India that I had referred to previously has also been there and has been working in this regard because it has been complementing the efforts with its own set of guidelines that has been effective from February 2024. Now, the ASCI guidelines are stringent standards for environmental advertising, requiring absolute claims of eco-friendly to be supported by robust data or credible accreditations. Now, they mandate the comparative environmental claims must provide clear evidence and benefits over the alternatives. We have seen SEBI and the BRSR, but there is also the RBI that has further strengthened this regulatory landscape within its framework for green deposits that has implemented it in 2023 as well. Now, this framework aims to mobilize resources for environmental benefits and activities through related activities like scheduled commercial banks and deposits taking NBFCs. Now, the RBI guidelines, they specify eligible activities, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and clean transportation, while explicitly excluding certain projects like those involving fossil fuels and nuclear energy. Now, the framework, the RBI framework also mandates annual third-party verification and impact assessment with specific metrics for claiming and whatever has been set forth for measuring environmental benefits, such as greenhouse emissions avoided and energy savings. So these are the already established reporting regulations that has been complemented by the 2024 guidelines, which has come into effect right now. Now, with regards, apart from this recent guidelines, what are the other regulatory frameworks that are there in this regard? The three we have seen, the Energy Conservation Act is also there. And what are the global ESG standards that are there? We have the EU Green Deal and Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD, and the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. Now, greenwashing in the Indian sector, how greenwashing actually manifests and why has it been under the carpet for all this while? First, overstating renewable energy investments by company. I will be substantiating this with a few case studies as well. Second, misleading carbon offset claims. Third, selective disclosures of environmental data that is preferable or assistable to the company, and the regulatory gaps that exists in India. I would be moving my presentation. This is not there in the slide, so therefore I'm just putting it from here. The regulatory gaps that are there in India, it lacks a standardized ESG metrics, but it will be further strengthened that we have the 2024 regulations in place right now, and the insufficient penalties for misleading sustainability claims. Now, greenwashing in the energy sector, how greenwashing actually manifests. So the first is overstating renewable energy investments. Next, regulatory gaps that we just saw. And let's see this with a few case studies that I have. The first case study that I'll be taking, which isn't there in the slide, I'm sharing it with you. The first case study is with regards to Vedanta Sterlite Copper Plant in Tuticorin. Now, the background of this is Vedanta's plant in Tuticorin, Tamil Nadu, was a significant contributor to India's copper production. Now, the company consistently portrayed itself as adhering to sustainable and environmentally friendly practices. Now, the allegations of greenwashing came in despite its claims that the plant faced persistent allegations of environmental violations, including air and water pollution, which adversely affected local communities. And in May 2018, protests against the plant's operations turned very violent, resulting in the death of about 13 people and subsequent injuries. And the government ordered the closure of the plant. Now, the regulatory and the legal actions in this place, Vedanta challenged this closure in various courts. And in August 2020, the Madras High Court upheld the Tamil Nadu government's decision to close the plant, citing various environmental violations and suppression of critical information. And the Supreme Court also later dismissed Vedanta's plea to reopen the plant, reinforcing the emphasis on environmental compliance over corporate claims. Now, specific to the energy sector, the NTPC, the National Thermal Power Corporation, India's largest power producer, with a significant portfolio in coal-based power generation. And in recent years, NTPC has announced ambitious plans to expand its renewable energy capacity, aligning with global sustainability reports. But this is where things went wrong. Now, despite its renewable energy initiatives, NTPC simultaneously pursued substantial expansion in its coal-fired power capacity. In April 2023, reports indicated that NTPC planned to expand the power generation capacities of 8 of its coal-based power plants by more than 10 gigawatts. Now, this dual approach raised the concern about the sincere claims of NTPC's commitment to sustainability, as environmental impacts of increased coal-based power generation may offset the benefit of its renewable projects. And the conclusion, NTPC's simultaneous investment in renewable energy and expansion of coal-fired power plants presents a complex narrative where there lies a positive aspect as well of positive sustainability initiatives are potentially being undermined by continued reliance on coal, a major contributor to greenhouse emissions as well. The third is with regards to Adani's coal mining projects. Now, the Adani Group has diversified its conglomerate operations with significant investments in various sectors, including energy. Now, the company has publicly committed to sustainable development, as the previous speaker also mentioned, and has invested in renewable energy projects. However, the allegations of greenwashing has come up here as well. Contrary to its sustainability claims, the group has been actively expanding its coal mining operations. And as of July 2024, the company operated 6 large mines and had plans to do more or double its coal mining capacity, with at least 16 new coal mines being proposed. And this aggressive expansion in coal mining raises questions about the group's commitment to sustainability and suggests a potential case of greenwashing. The fourth case is with regards to Reliance Industries' green hydrogen initiatives. RIL, a major player in India's energy sector, has announced again significant investments in renewable energy, particularly in green hydrogen production. And the company aims to transition to green hydrogen production by 2025 and has committed to substantial resources in this endeavor. Now, where are the greenwashing claims? While the claims are commendable, the company's contributions to have substantial investments in petrochemicals and traditional energy sectors are also there. Now, moving forward to a very important aspect of whether energy is service or not. Now, why this debate? And the legal perspective of classifying energy as a service impacts regulation, pricing, and consumer protection as well. Now, the Indian legal framework, does it treat energy as a service or somewhat else? Now, as per the Energy Act of 2003, it governs generation, transmission, and distribution as an essential service. And it has also introduced open access, recognizing the role of service providers as well. And the Consumer Protection Act 2019 defines services quite broadly, allowing challenges against unfair trade practices in the energy sector. And the renewable energy service companies, the RESCO model, that are shifting towards energy as a service via leasing and pay-per-use models. And the regulatory challenges that exist, the tariff setting and consumer rights. Now, the legal and policy perspective is energy legally recognized as a service in India? Now, as per the 2003 Act, yes, the Consumer Protection Act also has a role to play. And as per the Goods and Services Tax framework, electricity is exempted from GST, but other related services like consulting, maintenance, etc., fall under the service tax categories as they are treated as an essential service. Now, on the other hand, ancillary services such as construction or installation or maintenance of electricity or electrical infrastructure may attract applicable GST tariffs. Now, towards the last leg of the presentation that I would bring forward is with regards to the global best practices to counter greenwashing. Now, in the global perspective, we have the EU's anti-greenwashing regulations, which goes and complies by strict verification of sustainability claims under CSRD, green taxonomy for classifying sustainable activities. In the USA, we have SEC's climate disclosure rules, mandatory climate risk disclosures, penalties for misleading ESG reports. In Australia, we have the legal actions against companies making false environmental claims, as the Australian Securities and Investment Commission looks into it quite vehemently, and the transparency in carbon offset projects. Now, best practices in India that can be adopted that is going in the right direction per se. The adoption of third-party audits for ESG claims, one. Second, standardizing ESG reporting metrics in the energy sector. And third, the penalties for misreporting and misleading claims. Now, some of the recommendations that can come in is with regards to SEBI's oversight on ESG reporting, aligning it with global best practices with regards to the Australia and US counterparts. And the corporate best practices can focus on transparent, verified ESG reporting, clear differentiation between actual sustainability achievements and future goals of each and every company. Now, the future and what can policymakers do, and the last part with regards to key ESG considerations, especially from the environmental point of view, the regulatory compliance, adherence to all kinds of environmental laws, though it is not easy, but yes, it needs clearances for various projects from various authorities, whether it be the CRC or other places, transitioning to renewable energy, investments in clean energy, energy efficiency, and monitoring carbon footprint management by emissions monitoring and reporting, and the net zero goals. all of these combines with social considerations as well, with regards to community engagement and impact, wherein the local employment providing jobs to local communities, especially in rural or underdeveloped regions. And CSR obligations as per the 2013 Act, companies meeting certain thresholds must allocate 2% of their profits to CSR activities, focusing on energy access, education, and healthcare, but not only just alerting, but also implementing and proper reporting as well. And access to clean and green energy, affordable energy solutions, rural electrification, for which we have the Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana as well. So all of these combined together can come and do their bit, and the greenwashing claims can actually be looked into by the major regulators as well. Transparent reporting, ethical practices and anti-corruption measures, policy alignment, and the global best practices can be circular economy models like practicing energy recycling, waste to energy initiatives, and sustainable resource management. Digitization and smart technologies, as far as possible, integrate smart meters, AI-driven energy management, blockchain for transparent tracking and trading of energy credits, and lastly, the stakeholder engagement for conducting stakeholder consultations, ensuring that investors, regulators, and communities are aligned with the company's ESG's goals. With this, I end my session. Thank you, everyone. Sir, if you would want to say a few words and then kick it.
Yeah. Just on the thought of greenwashing, we have shared in the chat box a recent write-up that we have.
Sir, you're muted.
Yeah. So a recent write-up that we have published in Bar and Bench on greenwashing, where participants able to access the same. Okay. Excellent. Great. Good. Okay. So I hope in the chat box we have put two things. What is the definition of greenwashing? And my question to you is, does this definition of greenwashing, does it apply to the energy sector? Jay was making a very important presentation on whether electricity is a product or a service. We lawyers continue in the court to debate and argue. So I disagree with Jay because he said electricity is service. I would like to say electricity is a product. Ritesh and my other industry colleagues would like to argue with me. I think it's a product. It's not a service.
So
While Jay said it's a service, I would like to debate and say no. I would like to provoke you rather, and say it's a product.
Sir, it is
Raj
good.
wants
Can you
to
hear
comment.
me?
Raj.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So in power sector, generation is neither service nor commodity. It is manufacturing.
Yes.
Transmission and distribution is in service business because they are transporting electrons.
Yeah.
And trading and supply is in commodity business. So it is, if you see power sector together, it is a both service and commodity. But if you are dealing individually, then generation is not commodity nor service. It is manufacturing. Transmission and distribution is in service business, and supply and trading of electricity is in commodity business.
Right.
So this is a general now understanding across, but we can debate.
Yeah. So taking Raj Singh's clue, under the Electricity Act of 2003, there is something called electricity theft. There is something called electricity theft. Okay, so I told you energy and electricity are not one and the same, right? Energy can come from oil and gas. It can come from so many other sectors. And we use energy in various forms and various processes, right? So if you see this law currently that is being issued by the Consumer Protection Council, it is to protect consumer interest. Okay, so you have to say that the greenwashing law is not a very broad law yet. Currently, of course, you can look at BRSR, you can look at various other mechanisms, but you have to understand that this is to protect consumer interest. So when someone is supplying energy or electricity to a consumer, then this law will trigger it. But in a B2B format, this law will not trigger it. right? B to I format. This law will not trigger in investor format. So you have to understand, right? So misleading statements on claims that you are green, you are sustainable, you are environmentally friendly can happen in various forms. For example, if I'm going for an IPO, I may actually give a misleading statement, right? That my sector is a clean, green, renewable sector. And I can make a lot of claims on environmental matters as well. So we have to understand where this law can trigger in, who can make a claim, and which is the forum in which you can actually redress the same. So that's why Jay's presentation on Advertisement Standard Council of India, on RBI guidelines, because we are talking of green, bonds today. That Reserve Bank of India has given us a mandate for companies to promote renewable energy sector. So while world over, I think greenwashing is a very important, issue to be tackled, especially on the environment and social governance sector. In India, we have just propelled this through the regulatory processes. So different regulators may actually come up with different guidelines on the aspects of greenwashing, and probably we'll have to wait for CERC and other agencies in the energy and power sector to actually state what could these be as well, right? So we'll move on to the next presentation as well. And that's from Gayatri KK. And that's also a very important and an interesting presentation for most of you to take consideration and note of. And that presentation is on carbon credits, energy and carbon credits. Gayatri KK.
Yes, sir. I hope I'm audible and my slides are visible. I have only 2 slides, so my slides will not move so much during my presentation. I have very limited number of slides. I've tried to contain all.
I think people were more concerned on the slide being moving or to hearing what Jay was saying. So I was a little worried now.
Yeah, so I have very limited number of slides, so they're not going to move much during my presentation. All the necessary points are given as bullet points. Other explanation will happen during the presentation. If at all you have a doubt, you can post it in the chat box. So my name is Gayatri KK, and this session will deal with carbon credits as a tool for meeting certain energy goals we have as a country as commitments under certain international agreements. So this is the basic focus of this particular session. So let's get some of the basics first before we move on to carbon credits as such. So greenhouse gases, when they are trapped in the atmosphere, they raise the global temperatures. This you all must know, right? So this trapping of the greenhouse gases, which raises global temperature, is what causes climate change. Now, climate change has several devastating consequences. It causes frequent floods, it causes frequent droughts, it causes frequent wildfires also. The most recent wildfire that we saw was happened in California, which was contained successfully a few days ago. So we have a lot of international agreements, international treaties, which try to fight climate change, which try to halt the raising of global temperatures beyond a certain limit. One such instrument we have is the Paris Agreement. Now, Paris Agreement was adopted in the year 2015. Okay, this is a legally binding international treaty. By legally binding, I mean that whatever is prescribed by the agreement, by the treaty, has to be followed by the parties to that agreement. So this is a legally binding treaty under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So the main goal of Paris Agreement is to prevent or halt the global temperatures from rising beyond 2 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial levels. Pre-industrial level means the temperature as it was before the Industrial Revolution. So our goal is not to increase our global temperature 2 degrees beyond the pre-industrial levels. This is the goal of Paris Agreement. Although the goal has now changed to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius beyond the pre-industrial levels. We have breached this limit multiple times in the recent years, but that's another discussion. So this is the main goal of Paris Agreement. Now, As per this agreement, Article 4, Para 9 of this agreement stipulates that every party to this agreement should submit a document called as Nationally Determined Contribution, or you can see the short form I've used in my slide, NDC. So every party to this agreement should submit their nationally determined contributions. It is essentially a roadmap in which these parties will outline how they are planning to achieve their commitments under the Paris Agreement. So India is a party to the Paris Agreement, and India has submitted its first nationally determined contribution, or NDC, in August 2022. So every 5 years, every party has to update their NDC and submit it again. So under its NDC, India has two main energy goals. This is what is relevant for us. The first goal is to reduce emission intensity by 45% by 2030 from 2005 levels. So in 2005, India's carbon emission was around 1,585 metric tons of carbon dioxide. So we are trying to reduce this by 45% by the year 2030. This is the first goal. The second goal is what you can see on the slide, to achieve 50% cumulative electric power supply from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. So what are we trying to do with respect to the second goal? The entire country's energy demand, at least 50% of that should be supplied through non-fossil fuel energy sources by the year 2030. This is the second goal. So to achieve the second goal, the country is trying to achieve 500 gigawatts of installed capacity of non-fossil fuel energy sources by 2030. In the year 2022, the installed capacity of non-fossil fuel energy sources. These non-fossil fuel energy sources can be solar, hydro, nuclear, all of these things. So we had 175 gigawatts of installed capacity of these non-fossil fuel energy sources in 2022, which has increased to 190 gigawatts by 2023-2024 period. And our goal is to increase this to 500 gigawatts by 2030. So our goal is to transition from a very coal-dependent, coal-intensive economy to a cleaner, greener economy with the help of non-fossil fuel energy sources. So as you can see, in 2022, we had 175 gigawatts of installed capacity. 2023-2024, it has increased to 190. So 500 gigawatts is not something that is impossible for us to achieve. So we are on a steady path. But we still have the first goal, which was to reduce our emission intensity by 45% by 2030. For this particular goal, we can look into carbon credit as a tool to achieve this particular goal. Now, carbon credit was an innovation introduced by the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. That is another international instrument. So Kyoto Protocol Article 17 introduced a concept called emissions trading. So under this particular protocol, whichever country is a party to that particular protocol have certain limits on their emissions, that country A can emit up to this much carbon dioxide, country B can emit up to this much carbon dioxide. So let's take the example of two countries, country A and I'm really sorry, country A and country B. So country A, let's take, this is just an example. So country A is permitted to emit up to 2 metric tons of carbon dioxide. In reality, we know it's much higher than that. I'm just giving an example. And country B is also allowed to emit up to 2 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Okay. Now, country A, maybe because of many reasons, maybe because of mismanagement, maybe they do not have enough resources to transition from a coal-intensive economy to a clean economy. Due to many reasons, they were not able to control their emission within this 2 metric ton, that is their limit. And they've emitted more than that. They've emitted 1 metric ton extra. So the total emission will be 3 metric tons. Now country B, due to proper management and maybe they have enough resources to transition to a clean or a green economy, they were able to control their emissions. And they have they have not even emitted the allowed or the permitted limit of emissions. They've only emitted 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. They were permitted to emit 2 metric tons, but they have emitted only 1 metric ton. 1 metric ton they were permitted, but they have not emitted. They have managed to reduce their emissions. So country A, which has emitted beyond their limit, can purchase this surplus emission or the spare emission units from country B. So country B can trade their spare emission units to country A, which was not able to control their emissions. So this is known as emissions trading. So what has happened here is carbon has been commodified. Carbon has been made a commodity like any other commodity we can buy and sell in a market. Now, I know greenhouse gas is not just carbon. There are other gases like methane. But generally, whenever we talk about climate change, we tend to talk in terms of carbon. And that is the reason why you will see all the terms associated with carbon market, carbon credit, all of that prefixes carbon instead of greenhouse gas. So this emission trading, which was introduced by the Kyoto Protocol, has led to the establishment of a global carbon market. So carbon is traded like any other commodity in regional markets, in national markets, and even in international markets. Now, carbon trading happens not just between countries, it can happen between private entities, it can also happen between even private individuals. So you all must have heard about this company called Tesla, right? Tesla, which is run by Elon Musk. Now, I'm not stating this as a fact, but there is an allegation made in a lawsuit against Tesla that their main source of revenue is not the cars that they manufacture, the electric vehicles that they manufacture, but their main source of revenue is carbon credits. So the spare emission units, which I mentioned under Kyoto Protocol, is now known as carbon credits. So 1 carbon credit represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide either removed or reduced from the atmosphere. Any doubts? 1 carbon credit represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide either removed or reduced from the atmosphere. So let's take the example of 2 companies. There is company A, which manufactures vehicles which are run on petrol or diesel. So these vehicles emit a lot of carbon dioxide. Their manufacturing process is also very carbon intensive. Okay. And there is company B, which finances or which funds a lot of green projects. What can be these green projects? It can be afforestation, it can be installation of solar panels, it can be carbon capturing. There are technologies which can directly capture carbon from the atmosphere. So it can be any of these activities which reduces or removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This is what company B focuses on. Now, company A, due to many reasons, again was not able to control their emissions within the prescribed limit. They've gone beyond their limit. Let's take, for an example, let's imagine they have emitted 50 tons of carbon dioxide over their prescribed limit. So in any country, there will be certain laws and regulations which will say that this is your prescribed limit of emission. So based on that, let's assume that company A has emitted 50 tons of carbon dioxide over and beyond their prescribed limit. Now, company B, on the other hand, has managed to remove or reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So each ton of carbon dioxide that company B was able to remove or reduce will be represented by 1 carbon credit. So company A, which has emitted 50 tons of carbon dioxide in excess to their limit, can buy equivalent amount of carbon credits from company B. So 50 tons of carbon dioxide will be equal to 50 carbon credits. So they can buy 50 carbon credits from company B. The money that company B will receive from the trade of these carbon credits can be used for more green projects. can be used to fund more green projects. This is the basic idea. This is not known as carbon offsetting. So we are essentially trying to maintain a balance between the excess amount of carbon dioxide that is emitted by one party, and we are trying to reduce or remove it elsewhere. This is essentially carbon offsetting, and this is the concept of carbon credit. Okay, so carbon trading is a market-based solution to fight climate change. It is a market-based mechanism or a device to fight climate change. So India is also trying to establish a domestic carbon market. By 2026, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Power, and Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, these three are trying to establish a domestic carbon market for India through a scheme called Carbon Credit Trading Scheme. So this is still in the works. The seed was sown in 2022 through the amendment of Energy Conservation Act. This act was amended to pave way for establishing a domestic carbon market. So under this particular scheme, there is a thing called as carbon credit certificate. So the term that we prefer to use is carbon credit certificate instead of simply carbon credits. One carbon credit certificate represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide either removed or reduced from the atmosphere. The concept remains the same. It's just that we have added a certificate. We have made it into a certificate rather than just simply carbon credits. So there are two mechanisms. There will be two mechanisms under our domestic carbon market. One will be a compliance market or a compliance mechanism. Compliance mechanism will be completely overseen by the government. Everything that happens in a compliance mechanism will be regulated by the authorities designated by the government. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency will be the administrator of this particular scheme. So there are certain sectors identified. So far, around 9 sectors are identified, such as aluminum, steel, etc. So entities that fall under these sectors will have to register in this scheme. And they will be given certain targets, that certain limits for emission, that you can emit up to these limits. The entities which manages to overachieve their goals, which means they have managed to reduce or remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, can issue these carbon credit certificates to entities which fell short of their goals, which were not able to control their emissions within the limits prescribed, which has emitted more than their limits. So they will purchase carbon credit certificates from the entities which has managed to reduce or remove carbon dioxide. The concept remains the same. But this is compliance mechanism which will be regulated by the government as such. It also speaks of a voluntary mechanism. Now, this will not be regulated by the government. The standards and the limits, all of that will be prescribed by private organizations or private standard institutions or NGOs. So even other entities who do not belong to these sectors can voluntarily register themselves with the scheme and can try to bring down the emissions. So this is how the carbon market for the country is, envisaged or sort of designed. And this is supposed to come into effect from 2026. So now I hope you know what carbon credits are and what carbon offsetting is and how this should work in theory. Now, how it actually works in practice is something we should always be concerned about, to not repeat those mistakes when a domestic market for carbon will be established in our country. So the concerns are like this. Okay. First concern is additionality. So whenever certain amount of money is generated through the trade of carbon credits, that money should always lead to genuine new projects instead of funding existing projects. Let me give you an example. Let's say there is a company which claims that we are reducing or removing carbon dioxide, so we can issue carbon credits. But what exactly this company or this organization is doing is that they're merely taking a patch of land which has a group of trees which are already existing, and they're claiming that we are protecting these trees from being cut down. And this is how we are removing or reducing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, if those trees were not in any actual danger, the company or the organization is not doing anything, and they're taking credit for something that those trees are already doing. They're not creating any additional benefit or value out of the money they have received through the trade of carbon credits. So additionality is a concern. There should be genuine new projects that should come out of the trade of carbon credits. Second concern is with respect to transparency, especially in the voluntary market. So when there is no proper mechanism or proper authority to oversee the carbon trade that happens in voluntary markets, we never know what exactly is transpiring behind the scenes. Now, why I say we never know what is actually happening is the issue of greenwashing, which Jay has just dealt with. So I'll give you two examples of greenwashing with respect to carbon credits. There is a huge carbon credit or a carbon offsetting project that happens in the Amazon rainforest. Amazon rainforest is under huge threat from poachers, from illegal timber trade and all of that. So there is this guy, Ricardo Stopp, who claimed that he is funding a lot of green projects in Amazon rainforest, and the carbon credits that are generated through these projects are sold to very high level players like Toshiba, Boeing, and Spotify. These are the consumers. These were the consumers. But what was actually happening behind the scenes was he was cutting down trees illegally from Amazon rainforest. These were being traded to US and European market to make furnitures. So he actually was claiming that he is reducing or removing carbon dioxide, but he was doing the opposite. This is an example of greenwashing with respect to carbon credits. Another thing, this is not necessarily greenwashing, but it is something related to human rights as well. Around 9.1 million hectares of land is acquired by different organizations for carbon offsetting throughout the world. And a large chunk of this land is in Africa. But they have not, acquired this land through proper ways. They have grabbed these lands from the indigenous communities who were living in these areas, and they have been displaced from these areas. So this is also another issue with respect to how these things actually transpire into practice. So I merely wanted to point these concerns because we shouldn't be going forward with a very idealistic mind. We should also move forward with a very realistic approach to these things, because carbon markets, generally the trend that can be seen around the world is that in theory it is perfect, but in practice there are a lot of concerns. Another issue that I would like to point out is with respect to the price of these carbon credits. How will you price these carbon credit certificates? Because if the price of carbon credit certificate is much lower than actually putting into some effort to transition to clean or green energy, companies will continue to pollute. They will never have an incentive to change their model of production to transition to clean energy, and they will buy the cheap carbon credit certificates just to show on paper that they are fulfilling their ESG goals. So this is all about this particular concept. I haven't opened the chat box. Let me go through the chat box. And sir, if you have any inputs to share.
Excellent, Gayatri. Thank you so much for this. I hope we get some credit for this workshop, academic credits. So yeah, that's an excellent presentation. So, on Gayatri's presentation, I had one question and I'm looking for the responses from the participants before we go on to the last, presentation. How many of you think, a carbon credit market, because some of you were, not very hopeful because it does not exist. It did exist at some point of time as an idea. We had an MCX exchange on carbon that was established, but it did not shoot off. But do you think carbon credit would come into existence? We would have such a market being created in India? How many of you think this is possible? And please note it is under the Energy Conservation Act. Okay, so that's critical and important. You must know the legal framework under which this is proposed to be established. So is this something that you all think is the next step forward? And do you think it's good for ESG? It's the need of the hour. Okay, some of you, is it good for ESG? Is it good for ESG? Okay, okay, wow. Good. Everyone is okay. Good for ESG. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. Does anyone want to know why is it good for ESG? I'm not sure. See, I'm not. I'm clueless. I'm clueless. What would carbon credit do for ESG? Anyone who wants to attempt? Genuine efforts. Okay, offset, Anmol, offsetting. Okay, and is offset a really kind of an alternate, maybe in the phase of energy transition? Okay, carbon reduction, part of environmental protection. Okay, wow. Wealthy countries will misuse, Manish. Wealthy countries, wealthy companies, wealthy traders. Okay, wow, that's good. That's nice. Good for E of the ESG. Okay, wow. Okay, it is motivational. Okay, not practical, is it? Okay. Okay, so I just wanted a response to her presentation, right? So there are two things that we must link to Gayatri's presentation. One is linking carbon credits to ESG and whether carbon credits is good for the market. I have a last question for all of you. I hope you'll all participate in this as well. And this is something that I want to debate with Gayatri after the workshop is, should we have carbon credit system or should we have a greenhouse gas emission system? I do not want a carbon credit system. I want a greenhouse gas emission credit system. Why only carbon? Is carbon the only problem from energy sector? Yesterday we discussed this, isn't it? Should it be only carbon?
Sir, I had
Correct.
mentioned that it is not just carbon that is the issue. Greenhouse
Yes.
gases is a whole
Is the
multitude
real
of gases.
yes,
But
yes.
because general discussion tend to happen in terms of carbon, all the prefixes for trading, for credits and everything is associated with carbon.
And this
It is
has been
inclusive of all
historical
the
also.
gases. Yes,
KK,
yes.
this has been historical, right from the time of our climate change diplomacy, negotiation. Carbon is the main issue. We also say carbon tax,
Yes.
carbon emissions, carbon trading. We have been fixated with carbon because, yes, this is the major problem. That's the major emission that needs to be tackled. But of course, I think the world realizes that while we deal with carbon, there are other greenhouse gases that also has to be dealt with.
It reduces the focus on other gases. It becomes a very one-dimensional issue that it's only carbon that is the problem.
Right? And energy sector is not going to just emit carbon. Please note. So I think, when we talk about greenhouse gases, it is important for us to understand that many of these greenhouse gases are naturally occurrent as well. Some and many can be man-made also. So I think these are two factors that have to be taken into consideration. So in 2026, if the government of India is looking for any of these, I think the broader scope could be some kind of a policy initiative that they must also look into. So I thought you must also look at this dimension, which is very critical for E in ESG. Okay, so that's great. Thank you, KK, for that presentation. Wonderful presentation from your side. We'll move on. I will invite now Girish to introduce our final speaker of this workshop. Girish, it is over to you.
So we have with us Advocate Rohit Kamath. He is a partner in Rex Law Chambers and has also been part of our team CEERA, and he has worked extensively in energy law and electricity sector as well. So we welcome Rohit for the session, and kindly take over the floor.
Namaste everyone. Am I audible? Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Perfect. I think today we will be discussing, I think there's too much of ongoing debate on electricity and energy and power and CSR and ESG. I'm sure that if not anything, I'm sure that you'll go with a glossary of words for your, further reading. I think that's what is one of the major purposes why we've had this workshop is that today, I think it's been about approximately about 3 or 4 years since we have given our vision for Viksit Bharat. And given the aspects of Viksit Bharat and also the global developments that's going across in the energy sector, are we ready to fine-tune our ESG related compliances, especially and particularly with the energy or the electricity sector? Now, one of the particular aspects that I always try to bring about, as an advocate for the energy sector is that the industry level dynamics is much, much complex, rigorous than any other sector. Anybody can take a guess why? Because I've already put the particular activities that are there essentially in the electricity sector. And any idea what is the biggest challenge that the sector holds? There's generation of electricity, there's transmission, and there's distribution. Which do you think is the most complex one? I think I can see some responses. Okay, accountability, transmission. Okay, distribution, transmission. Okay, excellent. A lot of people are giving across, troubles in the aspect of transmission and distribution alone. I'm sure that most of you have had experiences in the energy sector. I see a few words in generation. Generation is nothing. You just put a turbine, electricity is generated. There is not much of, rocket science that's, generally involved in it. It's one of the most simplest steps that is involved. I'm just giving a comparison with the other activities. The challenge is why you have issues in transmission and distribution is that electricity once generated cannot be stored. Excellent. I think Arunava Das has just taken the words out of my mouth. I think storage is one of the biggest challenges in the electricity sector. And that is one of the key dynamics that I think most essentially all of us have to be taking into consideration before speaking about the shift. Now, the other particular aspect that, which also is one more key dynamic feature of this sector is also that with regard to the grid distribution. Now, with regard to the load that is, being transmitted and the utilization, there are only a few sorts of, electrical, load that would be required for certain industrial aspects. So that brings across a challenge as to how it is to be managed. Now, that brought in a particular revolutionary aspect in the last few years, which has come across is with regard to your captive generative, schemes. Now, with regard to your captive generative schemes, what has happened is there is a particular allowance that is given across to most industrial units, whereby through the grid system, they are able to supply the electricity so as to allow them to allow for a lower reduction in costing. Now, when I'm speaking about the industry related dynamics, one of the major points that, which has to be kept in mind by those involved in this industry or engaged in this research is that the generation, distribution, and transmission are all three extremely a costly affair. Now, that being a costly affair, the investments that has already been done till now, are we ready to do the shift? Is it going to be effective on the cost? So it's again, a crucial debate would commence across is whether the cost of investment is yielded back. Now, if you look at the perspectives on the debate in the energy sector, the manner in which the power purchase agreements have been handled by the courts of law, you always seem to notice that the energy or the electricity sector has always been on a deficit. So being a deficit industry in itself and being more in favor towards the consumer-centric approach that the Electricity Act and the various policies of the government have taken, is it viable for having a shift, or is it something that is necessary? Is a biggest debate that is around the corner in this industry-related dynamics. Now, going further, yes, there are a few points that have been mentioned that in future BESS, yes, I think there are a lot of things that are coming across in the development in the technological structure with regard to smart grid system that is being brought, which is being plowed back into the particular industry. I think there are a lot of innovations that are centering the aspects of storage and deliverability of the electricity that's taking place in the industry. I'm sure it is a long way, but right now, when we are working on that particular aspect, are we shifting towards a new aspect of nuclear? I think that's one of the particular aspects. Now, that brings me to the context of identifying the phases in which the energy sector has been blooming. If you look at it, I think there are a lot of leading authors who have categorized the energy sector in 4 phases. Okay. In the first phase was the Industrial Revolution phase, which subsisted probably till 1995, wherein we had rapid scale of increase in per capita consumption of energy. And now we have slowly transitioned to the second phase, wherein we have started speaking about increasing of your per capita energy household, being energy sufficient, or particular aspect of self-sufficiency is something that came in the second phase, wherein you're trying to make electricity accessible for all. And that, I think, is now coupled with the government of India's initiative in your Jal Shakti ministry is also trying to bring across aspects, wherein they are trying to bring across Har Ghar Jal initiative, and simultaneously they're also looking at the Vikas program and schemes, wherein they are trying to ensure that electrification of rural households are also achieved through captive generative systems. Further here, the particular point of narration that comes across is now that we have moved towards the third phase, that is from the year 2025. I think that is one of the phases which is going to subsist till about 2030. Now, in the next 10 years, global visionaries have told that we are slowly going to move towards synthetic fuel or synthetic substances as alternatives to your existing finite resources. Now, this is a phase wherein you might come across of fuel sources for generation of electricity, such as through ammonia and other particular substances. I think India is now currently trying to go towards the aspect of nuclear fissions, wherein small and medium reactors are being, progressively spoken to be installed in the next 5 years. Okay, and yesterday, I think the finance ministry just announced a budget as well in this perspective. Now, the whole premise comes back and forth to the very aspect that whether are we ready for the change. Now, these are all extremely innovative thoughts that we can speak of. Of course, I can always say that we should always go for a green fuel because I'm not going to lose anything, right? The industries are the ones that are going to lose. And when I'm speaking of industries today, majority of the power sectors are actually public funded and financed. Okay, it is not one person's private funds that is involved. It is not just the government that is involved, but rather public resources that is involved through the stock exchanges, right? So most of your power generation and transmission companies are listed entities where, public funds are the highest sources of such capital intensive businesses. Now, if we are to shut down an industry merely because they are not in line or in tune with the ESG principles that we are going to be speaking of, then are we ready to take that financial cut? Okay. Now, this is one of the biggest challenges that I'm sure that this industry is going to face. There is going to be burnout. There is going to be a large scale repercussion that speaks of, are we ready to accept it in the similar nature that we accepted demonetization? Well, that is one of the biggest debates that I would see if we are to shift from the erstwhile segment where we had a higher dependency on coal and other finite resources to the particular green and renewable resources. With that, I'll just move on to the challenges that we are also going to have across. Now, one of the particular aspects for the development of the energy sector or the electricity sector is that there is a requirement for a circular economy. Now, what do you mean by a circular economy? It means that the demand for electricity should be continuous. There should not be any particular aspect of shortfall of demand at any given point in time. Now, that completely goes counterintuitive to the aspects of sustainability. When we are speaking about of a circular economy, it means that the environment is constantly being used and utilized. Now, that aspect and moving to the aspect of a shift in the industry is something that is going to be causing a counterintuitive balance in the aspects of improvising your sustainability index in the electricity or the energy sector. The dependency on finite resources, like I've already told you, is quite high as of now. Government is one of the largest investors in the industrial segment, where coal-based generative units have been invested and created across. And this particular aspect is something that is one of the particular challenges. The next one is your 3R. I'm sure that all of you must be aware of this 3R. Okay, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Now, one of the biggest challenges that the industry has is adapting to itself to the 3R cycle. Reduction, can it be possible to reduce the amount of coal intake? Probably not. Is there a possibility to recycle the usage? Probably not again. Is it possible to reuse what is already done? Again, probably not. Now, these are the biggest challenges for imbibing the 3R cycle in the industry sector, which I feel that, in the long run, it is something that we have to keep in mind before we cause a shift into the particular industry. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I'm sure that in the next few slides, I will also be discussing about 2 or 3 case studies, is that the particular wastes that is left, is one of the biggest aspect that, you will have to look in. With usage of coal generated units, there is fly ash waste that comes across, and managing that fly ash waste is one of the biggest challenges that those industries that are in power captive generative units would have a particular aspect to be controlled. Now, when I spoke of 3R, I also want to bring in the particular or highlight the aspect of the 3 Ps as well. Any idea what the 3 Ps are? People, planet, and profit. Now, in the last few discussions in this sessions, I'm sure that you must have clearly understood that most of your power or the energy sector is for profit, right? So people and planet take a setback when it comes to profit motive. But the whole aspect of the 3P system is that people, profit, and planet has to run simultaneously. Now, this is something that is one of the major challenges probably the sector would also face in bringing about the particular aspects. Yeah. Okay. So I think someone has said that no one loves to discuss about the negative points. Please note, I think probably one of the major reasons why I'm bringing across the negative aspects of becoming ESG oriented is that the decisions or the deliberations should be more practical than just insightful. Now, it is easy for me to come and say that, yes, from tomorrow onwards, I'm not going to be making use of X, Y, Z. Do I have a sufficient alternate? Do I have a particular aspect where, I can shift, efficiently and economically? Now, for me and you, even if they're going to increase the electricity unit rate by, say, 5 rupees, probably it's not going to pinch the hole in pocket. But what about the commoners? What about those below poverty lines? What about those who are depending on electricity extensively for their basic survival? Now, these are aspects that you need to keep in mind, right? So causing a shift, definitely I'm going to be contemplating that no particular industry aspects is going to be putting across the burden onto their investments. Rather, they are going to shift the burden to the consumers of the power or the electricity alone, right? So that is one of the particular aspects that need to be looked in. So here, another person has mentioned that EU has moved to gas for electricity generation and UK has shut down coal power plants. See, this is possible. Okay, probably if India was the size of UK, I would have said yes. Okay, so that is one of the major things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking across the particular aspect that, the utilization perspective that is there in those countries and the requirement of your per capita unit consumption. Please have a comparables when you're, trying to say that if country A can do it, country B can also do it. Yes, that is possible. If you're like, say, for example, you're going to change your breakfast schedule. Yes, I am sure that it is possible. But if the whole thing is going to change your time zone, probably not. It is impractical to just say that, because UK has a different time zone, we should also have the same time zone, right? So that is one of the particular aspects. I'm just contextualizing my pointers to the Indian energy sector so that we speak about what is practically possible to be developed and not just, on the top lines of having a shift towards a greener economy, right? Yeah. Yes. So now what is this ESG in the context of energy sector? Now, first E that I would like to put across is the environment. Now, depending upon the choice of environmental factors that you have your energy generation unit set up. Okay. Now, if it is a coal-based generation capacity that you want to set up, the first thing that you require is extensive supply of water. Okay, because most of these coal generative units have or generate a huge amount of heat, which requires to be extensively cooled down. And as such, the environment that you are going to be setting up your industry is completely, based on the type of unit that you want to set up for generative units. Now, on this context, I would like to bring across one of the aspects about the Dabhol Power Project. Any ideas about the Dabhol Power Project? Or why it is quite, I'm just putting it in the chat box. Yes, any chat GPT users, please do join in the discussion. Yeah. The Dabhol Power Project is one of the first, public-private partnership projects that was executed in India. The Maharashtra government had, brought in about the particular aspect that, it is one of the first and finest public-private partnerships in the industry, that is the power generation sector. Yes, it was a coal-based project proposed to be developed by Enron. Yes, exactly. So what we are trying to speak here was that this project comes into heights for the sole reason that it was a debacle for the Indian institution. Both the government of India and the government of Maharashtra had immense amount of a financial, monetary, and international embarrassment on account of this project. Now, what I would say is that with regard to the project that was proposed, there was a mandatory purchase clause that was put in. Please note, friends, mandatory purchase clause. Now, if you are working in the energy sector, you will definitely note that every generator of electricity, the sole revenue contract for him is the power purchase agreement, and there is no other contract that generates revenue for a generator other than the power purchase agreement. It is all the other contracts that they execute are only expenses. Expenditures, you might have about, say, 15 to 20 narratives of contracts, whereas revenue will just be one, which is your power purchase agreement. Now, because they are solely dependent on one contract alone for their entire revenue to cover the expenses from over 20 other contracts, such as your fuel supply agreement or your coal washing agreement or any particular aspect, which is only going to be an expenditure to the industry, they often retain something called a mandatory purchase clause. Now, this, my friends, is something like a Brahmastra, right? It can be very destructive for the industry or for the person who is agreeing for the purchase. Now, when a mandatory purchase clause is inserted, the Dabhol Power Project 2 had a similar aspect. The Dabhol Power Project, the Dabhol Power Corporation said that whatever power we generate should be purchased by your Maharashtra Electricity Company. And in case Maharashtra Electricity Company fails to purchase or, ascertain this mandatory purchase clause, then the government of Maharashtra shall give a counter guarantee to it. Look at this. The beauty of this agreement lies herein. In case the Maharashtra government fails to give across or entertain this mandatory purchase clause, then the government of India shall ensure that the purchase is done. So there were 3 counter guarantees that was given for Enron for coming down to India and setting up the Dabhol Power Corporation. Friends, I'm speaking about the early 1990s. where the per capita unit consumption of electricity was significantly lower than what it is today. Today, India is one of the global leaders in per capita consumption of electricity. I think thanks to its huge population. But then, nonetheless, today we are also having that high levels of consumption because the electricity sector is also one of the sectors that has bloomed with the 1992 policy, wherein generation of electricity, which was earlier state-owned, was completely privatized. Private participation was allowed thereafter. So that was one of the major change makers in increasing the per capita unit consumption of the electricity. Now look at this, friends. With this particular pointer of the mandatory purchase clause, even though the per capita consumption of electricity was low in 1991, the Dabhol Power Corporation ensured that every single unit of energy or electricity that is generated is purchased by the government of Maharashtra. Right? Now, this is a good arrangement. I think the Power Corporation gets its funds. It is giving electricity to the government as per its demands. But what went wrong here was that this became an international dispute solely because of Enron's ongoing violations in other countries. Enron, on account of its other disputes in other countries, was party to a international arbitration where they gave across a defense for their setbacks in other contractual obligations as one of the pointers that the government of India failed to exercise its power to honor the power purchase agreement with Dabhol Power Corporation. This was one of the particular debacles because I'm sure that all of you know the context of arbitration, right? So when an arbitration is ongoing, who are the parties to an arbitration? Only the parties who agree or consent to such an arbitration. Here, Government of India, with the power purchase agreement that it had, there was no arbitration clause. The arbitration dispute was ongoing between Enron and its other particular claimants against them in the International Court of Arbitration. But who was the one to be penalized in this entire thing? It was the Government of India. The Government of India, against whom an award was passed that the entire amounts along with interest amounting to close to about 200 million USDs was mandated to be paid to Dabhol Power Corporation. This is one of the particular aspects, which I would leave for your further, debate, is called one of the particular aspects that brings across the third world approaches to international law. Okay. One of the major reasons why India was looked upon down that time was because India was considered to be less developed of the various countries. But today, I think with Viksit Bharat and other schemes that is being brought about, and India is one of the most largest forerunners. I think about a decade of 2 decades has changed India's vision across globally. Today, I would say that if at all any such particular aspect were to be brought against India, India would be successful in defending its claims. And the unreasonable arbitrary actions that was taken in the Dabhol Power debacle is something that would definitely not arise in today's scenario. Right? So this is one of the particular aspects that I wanted to bring in across here. Now, the second pointer that you would have to look at when we are speaking about E in the context of the energy sector is that of the emissions and effluent discharge. Now, emissions and effluent discharge are one of the biggest challenges that the waste or the recycling aspect of the electricity generative units would face. And that is one of the particular aspects which the ESG rating will definitely take into consideration. Now, the second parameter that we speak about is S. I think I saw a few questions wherein they were asked whether CSR and ESG is one and the same. What do you think? Is CSR and ESG same, or which is broader? CSR versus ESG. कौन किसका बाप है? ESG is broader. Okay. So is CSR an aspect of ESG or is ESG an aspect of CSR? Okay, excellent. I think a lot of them have given the rightful answers. Please note, friends, ESG. E stands for environment, S stands for social, and G stands for governance. CSR. C stands for corporate, S stands for social, and R stands for responsibility. Now, if you look at it, ESG is much broader because it is on the concept of right from the start of investment itself. Okay. ESG is an aspect that even narrates the investment decisions of any business, whereas CSR comes into play only if the companies are making profits. That is only in the context of the Companies Act of 2013. Okay, but nonetheless, there are other entities which have gone ahead with the CSR framework even before CSR was made mandatory. A classic example of it is your Kyosei. Okay, so the Kyosei framework was also one of the reasons why we had something called CSR being brought forth. These existed even prior to CSR being mandated by the law. Toyota was one of the companies that followed the Kyosei framework. Now, if you look at the aspects of doing business, okay, I would say that you can take the example of 3Ps. Okay, 3Ps can be taken across as an aspect of doing business. The first and foremost is making profits. The moment you start making good amount of profit, you move to the people associated in the company. That is people. From profit, you're moving towards people. And after sufficiently having taken care of the people who are associated with your organization, that includes your employees, stakeholders, and others, then you move towards planet. A classic visionary in the aspect of 3Ps is your Tata's Jamshedpur plant. I think this is one of the particular aspects that you need to understand, to look into before you understand 3Ps as a concept. The company was formed for the purpose of making profit. As soon as the profits enhanced, immediately they move towards a township for the particular persons, who they are working with. And then thereafter, they started looking at the trust fund for various startups, which today is making a lot of businesses sustainable. Okay, I think Mr. Sunil Chogle has mentioned that I think 3P should move simultaneously. Please let me tell you that if you are to look at all 3Ps simultaneously, probably you are not going to be sustainable in the long run. Now, if we are to look at 3Ps to be running simultaneously, sustainability is one of the biggest challenges that you'll face. Okay, very few businesses will be able to make themselves sustainable without the intervention of government subsidies. For the particular purpose of running the organization, yes, they can show that we are taking the entire consciousness of 3Ps. That is where one of the biggest challenges comes across is your greenwashing, which, my good friends spoke in their previous discussions. Please note, friends, 3Ps is something that cannot practically work out in every industry. Forget every industry. In the energy sector, it is quite impossible and impractical. Right? It will only go across into the aspect of greenwashing if somebody were to say that, yes, this is green. I think I've seen one of the particular, observations in a petrol pump, wherein they say that their fuel is green fuel. The moment you see the green color light behind the petrol and there is a rhinoceros coming and telling to you that I am green. That is the classic example or expression of what greenwashing can go about when you're trying to show that 3Ps is being moved simultaneously in any particular business. Now, with that, I'll move on to the further aspect, that is the aspect of governance. Now, in the point of governance, there are multiple aspects of governance that comes across with regard to your corporate governance, your shareholder perspectives, or your investor perspectives. Now, that is also something that, which needs to be taken into considerations while trying to establish the ESG framework. Now, on your screen is something that you would notice across with various ESG ratings that are there, which are followed in respect of ESG reportings. Now, if you look at it, any guesses which category or aspect would the energy sector fall in? Any guesses? Any guesses? Low? Okay, no. Please note the energy sector sustainability rankings are always high. Very rarely I have found an energy company that comes in negligible, low, or even medium aspect or average aspect. Most of your energy industries, I'm sure that these rankings are already available on the entire portfolio of Google. So I think you can just check it across. Most of the times in the first rating, you find electricity generating units in the high sector. In the aspect of MSCI, you always find them to be determined either in BB or CCC, which is laggard or average. And in the aspect of your CDP ESG rankings, it is always that is come across in the aspect of disclosure. Okay, wherein a lot of disclosures become a shortfall when you're going about with the aspect of disclosures that is there in the energy sector. Now, when we are speaking of this, we are not speaking about ESG in the context that energy sectors are all being ESG compliant because they are getting a low score. You are not mandating that they should get a low score. All that you're mandating is you have to report whether they are negligible, low, medium, high, or severe. Now, what does this look like? Yes, I think in the previous session, somebody named a company and said that, yes, they are BRSR compliant. Please note, friends, BRSR compliant does not necessarily mean that you are ESG compliant. BRSR compliant is only a reporting guideline, wherein reporting is mandated for, say, about 150 top listed companies, and subsequently, with every year on year, about 50 to 100 companies are going to be added onto the list. Please note, that is the whole perspective. BRSR compliant does not necessarily mean that you are an ESG compliant industry. It is reporting vis-a-vis compliance. Please understand that. So we are here today discussing about more of reporting, but we are not speaking about compliance when we are speaking about ESG in this context. Now, that is where I want that shift to be genuine. It should not be something that which we carry out for the sake of it, but rather be more compliant, be more transparent towards the utilization aspects. That is something that can only come with a huge effects that is taken across, right? So with that, I also further want to speak to you about one aspect of bringing across the fiduciary duty to the environment. Friends, we have heard about the public trust doctrine. Now, this is one of the challenges that has to be brought into the energy sector. The public trust doctrine has to be made applicable when you are utilizing the energy from the environment. Then in that circumstance, you have a duty to safeguard the environment. That is the first and foremost that has to be mandated by law, which today has not yet been mandated. Fiduciary duty is a duty that every industry should have towards the people, planet, because they are having access to the nature by virtue of their trust that the environment gives you. Okay, so it arises out of a fiduciary relationship. So anyone accessing the nature should be declared to be in a fiduciary relationship, right? No, not social responsibility. It is a duty. It is a mandate. It is an obligation that is cast on you, not just a particular aspect of responsibility, right? That is something that needs to be mandated. So the second aspect is rebranding vis-a-vis compliance. Like I mentioned to you earlier, most of them are more into rebranding themselves as ESG compliant, but whereas compliance under ESG is not done. And there are few initiatives that the Indian government has brought in. I'm sure that they have been visited multitude number of times. But the last thing that I would like to bring across is yesterday's budget also revealed certain conversations in moving towards green fuel. One of the aspects that they've brought across is that nuclear energy mission for Viksit Bharat is sought to achieve 100 gigawatts of nuclear energy by 2047. And this is also proposed that the Atomic Energy Act and your Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act is going to be modified so as to encourage public and private participation in this sector. With this, I think probably these are the key challenges that which we are moving towards the industrial aspects. At the end of it, what probably all of us want to move towards is green consumerism. Like I told you, is the consumer today having a particular decision or discretion to bear the cost of green energy? That is where we have to move in towards in order to look across as to where a shift is to be taken. With that, I think I conclude my session, and I would request the moderator to take over. Thank you all for a wonderful, engaging discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit, for that elaborate session. And I hope the students were the participants had a very wonderful time looking at the chat messages. I hope you have answered all the chat messages. So we would move on to Professor Sairam sir to take over this session for the next 20 minutes. And after that, we would be having an exam. All of you are waiting for that, I know.
No, we are going to the assessment.
Exams? Okay, sir. Okay.
So, anyone from the NPTEL team is here?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Florence this side.
Yes, Florence, can you have the learning assessment shared with the participants?
Yes, sir. I'll post it now. 2 minutes.
Okay, no problem. So, friends, while NPTEL is preparing itself to share the learning assessment, this is just to, it's already there. All of you can take part. All the resource persons can also take part.
Sir, we will get the recording of this session.
Yes, yes. So we are going to share our YouTube channel with you. So in a day or two, the recording shall be available on the YouTube channel. Yeah. Okay. So everyone, can you go to the chat box and click on the Google form? We have shared the same. You get 15 minutes to finish this. I hope that's okay. I'll request everyone to kindly fill this learning assessment. It's just to pick up from what this workshop has offered you. It will also help us to understand what are the takeaways that you have already done in this workshop. So we'll pause for 10 to 15 minutes and then we'll conclude the workshop, if that is okay with all of you. But in the meantime, let me thank all the speakers, Rohit, Gayatri, KK, Jay, Pavitra and Raj Singh Ranjan, who have joined us today. I think this was a good morning that we have spent in understanding the nuances of ESG and energy. Of course, because of limitation of time, many of the speakers could not, elaborate, expand on various issues and points. This is just a kind of a takeoff session, friends. It's not a training session. It was more a legal awareness initiative from our side. Of course, as we go forward, a more detailed session is something that we can always get into. So thank you so much to everyone who have given us your support and lent your time and expertise today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sairam Bhaji, for inviting us. And it was a super excellent session. And I was very blessed to hear Gayatri ji and Mohanta ji and Kamat ji. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. I'll take leave from you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Have a great Sunday. And we'll be in touch, sir. Thank you so much. Yes.
Sir, one question I think written wrongly.
Which question?
One question, just let me open again. Which of the following are the mandatory disclosure of the ESG reporting? Here, leadership indicator, essential indicator, and industry specific, all are right. One is the operational indicator. I think we have to write the which of the following is not the mandatory for the disclosure of ESG reporting.
So the following.
No, no. question is, I think, correct because mandatory.
Question is
We are not leadership indicator, essential and industry. All three are a mandate, I think.
No, not like that.
Okay.
Okay. Can we conclude the assessment? I think, can we get a confirmation that everybody has completed the assessment? A few confirmation in the chat box would help us. Okay, excellent.
Sir,
excellent.
5 more minutes, sir.
Okay. Just one announcement. We will get the top 3 participants from this learning assessment, and we promise that we'll write to you and get your address and post a book. This is called the Energy Law and Policy book to you for the top 3 participants. Is that a good incentive?
So they're busy writing the exam.
No, they said yes. They said yes. They said yes. So that's what we plan to do. Hope I score enough. Pallav. Yes, sure. If not, you can always buy the book, Pallav. It's 500 rupees only. So if you send us your address with 500 rupees, you should get access to this book. Okay. We don't charge much. It's just the basic cost of printing is what we have charged. Okay. So I hope many of you know that we offer regular programs with NPTEL. In the current semester, we are offering 2 courses. One is on advanced contracts, tendering and public procurement. That is already there. Second is we are also offering this course on constitution and public administration through the NPTEL platform. So I hope you know these 2 courses. Ebooks, yes, we have already shared you some link for accessing some of these publications already. Yes, we have done that. Yeah. The contracts course has already commenced. 20th January this semester we commenced the course on contracts. Yeah, so that's also. Yeah, if you want internship opportunities, please write to us. It is CEERA@nls.ac.in. Yes. Oh, sorry. This is CEERA. Wait, let me give you the right email ID. Yes. If you are looking for internship opportunities, please write to us at CEERA@nls.ac.in. Doing both the courses. Oh, wow, Shivan. That's right. Great. I hope you get some loyalty points as well. But good. That's a great ability to learn more and do more. Yes, I have shared the email ID, Manish. Yes, I have done that. You can write to us if you're looking at internship opportunities. Okay. Yes. I'm not sure whether you can join the program midway, but I think you can talk to NPTEL about it. They'll be able to clarify the same. Right? Okay. We hope, we'll continue to remain in touch with you all in case there are further announcements of programs, training, workshops, or seminars that we do. We'll definitely reach out to you. Okay. So hope to, have you come back to some of our other events as well. Yeah. Yeah. But all of these is thanks to NPTEL, IIT Madras, who have given us a great platform for us to collaborate on this topic of ESG in environment. We hope to offer many more such workshops at the NPTEL platform in the days to come. What is the name of the book? Energy, Law and Policy in India. That's the name of the book. We have already shared various websites with you. You can just look at CEERA-NLS Pub. Can you share it again? Oh my God. Okay. I can share it again. I'm sure you were engrossed with the presentation. So I'm sharing it again. Okay. So these are our social media handles and YouTube channel. It's there in the chat box coming right now. I will share to you our website also, where you should be able to access some of our books. Okay, so this is our website. Thank you, Hema. Great session, excellent speakers. That's a tremendous feedback from your side. I acknowledge the same. Yes, thank you. Yes, some of you have already given me the feedback. Thank you so much. It was enriching 6 hours. Thank you for that. We hope your time is well spent. That was excellent session. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sanjay, as well. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think, as you understand, this is just a cursor. This was just an introductory session. Of course, this will only give you greater insights only. Yes. Thank you. So it's good to have made friends with you today. We hope to contribute to more of our knowledge domain in energy law, which we would want to specialize in the given time as well. Okay, so we should conclude now. Thank you very much for joining us and making this workshop a successful one, if I can term it so, with your permission. Let me thank Gayatri Girish for anchoring this entire workshop. She coordinated this workshop, she moderated it, anchored it very well. And thanks to the NPTEL team, Florence, and all the other members of NPTEL. I don't think we could have done this without NPTEL support. Thanks to the CEERA team, Jay, Vikas, and everyone who has been associated with CEERA in the past, KK, Pavitra, Rohit, Raghav, Ragya. Thanks to Raj and Muralidharan as well. Thank you, everyone, and thanks to the participants. I think we loved this audience. We loved this batch because you were all very active. I think you were all very keen to learn.
Can we get the video recording and slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It will be on our YouTube channel in a day or two. We are just waiting for NPTEL to share the recording. It will be there on the YouTube channel. Just maybe we can say by Wednesday it should be up in the YouTube channel. Yeah.
So which YouTube channel should this be?
It is the CEERA YouTube channel. We already shared it in the chat box. Just look for the chat box, please. We have a YouTube channel. Okay.
Sure, I'll
CEERA
have a look.
1997. At the rate CEERA 1997. That's the YouTube channel. Mehak.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Have a great Sunday. Hope to see you at yet another event of our side. Till then, goodbye.
Goodbye, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, great. Himachal Pradesh, very nice. We are very glad that we could reach Himachal Pradesh, which probably is looking to make itself, into a hydropower, state. So nice. Oh, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Amjad. Wow, that's nice. Good to know. I think India has been working with Saudi Arabia and collaborating quite a bit over there as well. Sri Lanka. Oh, wow, that's nice. So we had international participants. Oh, we had from USA, Belgium. Wow, Malaysia. Yeah, I didn't know this. I thought you were all just from India. Wow, we were really happy to have an international audience here. Excellent, excellent. Okay, that's nice. Okay, very good, very good. I'm so glad that some of you have joined us from different countries and jurisdictions. We hope we have contributed to your knowledge. Great. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing and thank you for joining us. Yes, thank you. All the best, guys, and stay safe and be environmentally responsible. I think that's the contribution we all can make.
Yeah, sir. This is Sunil Chogle from this side, sir. I have one query, or otherwise, I need your suggestion. I want to learn more about the open access policies, state-wise regulations, because I'm working with the industries and I'm working in a sustainability field. But nowadays, we are trying to achieve 100% renewable energy, but because of some policies restrictions, we are not able to do that. There is a lot of policies restrictions are there. Like for example, in Gujarat, we cannot go for the rooftop on-site solar project more than 1 megawatt. So that was the restriction. So such type of policy regulation, if I want to study, where I will get this, all the policies and all.
Sunil, at the moment, we do not have anyone who can offer this, but I think, you must liaison with SERC and CERC for the same. because they are the regulators. They are also supposed to do education, training, and awareness. And currently, this may differ from state to state, like you mentioned in Gujarat, for example. And as you notice, Sunil, the idea in the energy sector is that you can generate, but the transmission is completely state regulated. So if you have to put it on the transmission lines and sell it, the state will have to permit you and also give you the license to do the same. So this is something that I think only the SERCs and the CERCs can disseminate as knowledge, as training, and as what are the licensing requirements regarding the same. So I think, Sunil, I would direct you to SERC. And please note, citizens like YG Muralidharan yesterday was saying can interact with SERCs. SERCs have to have public consultation, public participation as well. So Sunil, that's the great forum in which you can actually, participate, interact, and learn.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So may I ask?
What is the name of the YouTube channel, sir?
YouTube channel is @CEERA 1997.
Sir, it is Javardhan, sir. Sir, this sessions were very vast and widely covered. So, sir, just for professional goals, I am asking that one has to focus just on environment or just on governments or just on reporting, or all these three can be taken at a time, because it's very vast.
It is. Jay, I completely appreciate and understand that, confusion. It's a vast area. Jay, please note, it's a combination of law, policy, management, and also expertise. So the energy sector itself is a huge sector. Please note it down. So the oil and gas sector, which is the conventional sector itself, is pretty big. Then coming to the non-conventional hydro and others, and then renewable. So I think, Jay, we are talking about various dimensions of the energy sector, and then generation, electricity, power, so on and so forth. So it's not something that you can specialize sector-wise. That's one. Second is ESG itself. I think will depend upon each of these sectors independently. For example, oil and gas, what is ESG for them? What is ESG in a hydro would be entirely different, right? So I think we are looking at core specialization at times with a broader understanding of what the mandate and the requirement is. Finally, Jay, reporting and corporate compliance is also a next level challenge. It's not something that can go with ground level implementation and compliance. So, of course, they are very broad, but of course, you can choose your interest and path and move forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, with this, let me conclude. Thank you very much. We'll all log out. Bye-bye. Yes, bye, Ritesh. Thank you. Thank you, Ritesh. Thank you, Manish, as well. Anmol, I think, this kind of integration, maybe we can have a discussion. Just get in touch with us. We'll have a conversation about the same. Okay. Yes. Yes, Pallab. Thank you. All the best. Bye, guys. See you.